with me, Audrey Brown. If you enjoyed today's program, you can listen to the interview wherever you get your BBC podcasts.
From the BBC, that was the interview. I'm Saroja Coelho. CBC News is next.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello there, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio, and we are live downtown in our CBC studio. It's 3 minutes to 6 o'clock. The current temperature is 0 in Winnipeg. And for today, we are expecting that we will see some sunshine and a nice high of 8 degrees in Winnipeg. Thanks so much for joining us. The morning show is on until 8:37 a.m. And let's say good morning to the team. May McKillop is in. Good morning, May. May produced some fabulous work that you're going to hear on the show today, but she's also directing the program and is going to be on air with us covering the commute. Good morning, Mr. Abby Adeyemi, our senior tech on the show. Abby will be on air also with us covering weather. And Mr. Brad Lillies is also in this morning. Brad is our YouTube producer, and you can watch us online, and we certainly hope you take a moment to do so at some point during the show. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells. We'll also see her. We're about to connect up with our CBC News Centre live. She's here with our headlines ahead of 6 o'clock.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba's opposition says it is okay with Manitoba Hydro devoting more power to Canadian customers. Premier Rob Canoe has announced 2 expiring hydro export contracts with the U.S. will not be renewed. PC hydro critic Lauren Stone says she's not opposed to that in principle, but wants to know how much that decision will cost. The Premier says Hydro incorporated the expiring contracts into its new rate application. And as the federal election nears, people in rural Manitoba hope healthcare in their communities isn't forgotten. Staffing shortages are part of ER closures and long wait times right across the province. We're going to hear the experience of a mother in southern Manitoba coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
I want you to mention Winnipeg's high is 8 degrees. Brandon, you should see 10 today, and up in Thompson, 3 degrees for your daytime high, but also sunny, so sunny north and south. Today on the program, later in the show, we've got a special treat. Local artist Rain Hamilton is going to be performing live, and part of that is because they take time to make sure that their art, their music is accessible. Today is American Sign Language Day. We'll find out how Rain does that with their music. Also, though, ahead of Rain, we're going to hear from another artist in our community who happens to be deaf. So we're going to hear about her work in community also. So stay tuned for that. Some special programming. Also, 2 of Winnipeg's brightest minds, this will be fun after 7, have won a big citywide science fair. They're 13, they're twins, and they're going to join us live in studio. Right now, though, it's time for World Report at 6.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
Ray Mendoza served with the Navy SEALs in Iraq in 2006, and now he's made a new film about one day that sticks out in his mind from that time. Ray will be here alongside the Toronto actor Defaro Wunatai, who plays Ray in the film, to tell you the story they wanted to tell.
Let's move!
That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young.
1 in 3 Sudanese, as we speak today, are displaced. 1 in 6 internally displaced persons globally come from Sudan.
A grim statistic from the UN's Mamadou Diane Baldi, a regional director for East Africa. Sudan's civil war is forcing people out of their homes. Today marks the 2nd anniversary of that conflict. EU and African Union countries are meeting in London to address the crisis. As Ithel Musa tells us, Sudanese Canadians say Ottawa is slow to bring refugees to Canada.
I contacted the Canadian High Commission in London within days of the war breaking out.
Canadian Sami Atabani is desperately trying to get his sister and her 7 children out of Sudan. He applied to Canada's family-based pathway program in hopes of getting them to safety, but the cap on applications had been reached.
Women are particularly vulnerable. She has a 12-year-old daughter.
Atabani has reapplied to bring them to Canada, but he's frustrated with the time it's taking.
I haven't heard anything. Why is there no urgency?
The United Nations says the conflict has sparked the world's largest displacement crisis, affecting nearly 13 million people. And the U.S. Special Envoy for Sudan says estimates suggest as many as 150,000 people have been killed. Kate Hickson is with Amnesty International USA.
We've seen in other instances where governments have moved very quickly to help with those who need to seek safety elsewhere to reunite with their family, and we don't necessarily see this with Sudan, and so there needs to not be that double standard.
More than 40,000 Afghan refugees came to Canada after the Taliban took over Afghanistan in 2021, and 300,000 Ukrainians were admitted after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So far, just over 700 people from Sudan have settled in Canada under the federal government's family-based pathway program. Idil Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
We will be keeping an eye on the latest inflation data today. Statistics Canada will release price growth figures for March next hour. The country is just beginning to feel the effect of U.S. President Donald Trump's trade war. Peter Armstrong has more.
It's been a pretty wild month for economic data. Volatility's taken over markets, fear of an escalating trade war is already impacting the real economy. But today's measure of inflation is like a snapshot of a simpler time. It wasn't tariffs pushing prices around. It was the end of a tax holiday. And on the flip side, it was gas prices dragging prices down. Tariffs were starting to roll out in March, but several exemptions softened that blow. Canada's retaliatory tariffs came into effect mid-month. But RBC economist Claire Fan says the real issue is that tariffs have a weird impact, driving up prices in the short term, but also deflationary as they drive down demand in the long term.
And that's the nature of the trade shock that we are in. It is inflationary and it is growth prohibitive. And those are at the opposite side of the mandate for a central bank.
But Fan says that impact of tariffs isn't expected to really show up in the data until this summer. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
Tariffs and international trade are the top priority for some Alberta farmers, and they're thinking about that as they consider who to cast their ballots for in this federal election. Party leaders have just 13 days to convince Canadians to vote for them. The CBC's Madeline Cummings has more from Edmonton.
Climbing into his tractor, grain farmer Shane Stridehorst is just a few weeks away from seeding fava beans in his fields northwest of Edmonton. With most Canadian pulses exported and a global trade war unfolding, he's worried.
What we really need is a government that's going to be willing to grow our international markets.
He says some farmers are considering swapping canola for barley in response to Chinese tariffs on Canadian canola oil. Fellow grain farmer Ron Kryko says he's voting Conservative, hoping Pierre Poilievre can break down trade barriers.
I think a lot of the farmers are just frustrated with what's been happening, and they want to change.
Kryko wasn't a fan of the carbon tax.
I don't know why you would tax something that is a necessity.
And even though Liberal leader Mark Carney got rid of the consumer carbon tax, that didn't win him over.
Well, they've had 10 years to prove themselves to be a worthy government.
Though international trade is top of mind for these grain farmers, it's not as important to Michael Verhoeven. He's the head grower at High Q Greenhouses and on the board of the Alberta Greenhouse Growers Association. He says since most industry growers sell to Canadian clients, they have different priorities.
Business management strategies the federal government has, like Agri-Stability, Agri-Invest, that they should be modernized and that they should be maintained.
All three farmers say they haven't heard agricultural issues discussed much during the campaign so far. Madeline Cummings, CBC News, Edmonton.
This Thursday night, Susan Bonner and Pia Chattopadhyay will bring you full coverage and analysis of the federal leaders' English language debate. That is April 17th at 7 p.m. Eastern on CBC Radio and the CBC News app. U.S. President Donald Trump is cutting off federal funding to Harvard University. The school is refusing to abide by the Trump administration's policy agenda for campuses. Last night, the government froze $2.2 billion in grants. The CBC's Richard Madden joins me from Washington. And Richard, what is the latest?
Yeah, this is setting up a major clash between the White House and a prominent Ivy League university. Harvard's president calls it an attempted takeover by the federal government, saying the university won't surrender its independence, and it becomes the first elite school to publicly refuse these extraordinary policy changes demanded by the Trump administration. Now, federal agencies threaten to pull billions in funding unless Harvard overhauls its admissions. Reports students the administration believes are hostile to American values, ensuring each academic department is, quote, viewpoint diverse, and eliminating all diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Now, the White House says it's part of its crackdown on campus activism and anti-Semitism, but Harvard law professor Andrew Crespo is suing the administration for violating First Amendment rights.
It's a transparent effort to change what is taught, what we say in our classrooms, what we teach our students, to make sure that the only things that are actually said on university campuses are things that the Trump administration wants to hear.
Now, the administration has been threatening to withhold billions to several Ivy League schools that had troubles with student activism in the past. First was Columbia in New York, which acquiesced. The administration has also paused funding to the University of Pennsylvania, Princeton, Cornell, and others.
What is the White House saying?
Well, this pressure tactic appears to be working in some cases. The White House says it will not use taxpayer dollars to fund what it calls Harvard's support of dangerous racial discrimination.
Thank you, Richard.
You bet.
This CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. More Canadian permanent residents are complaining about being stranded abroad. Last week, we told you about a woman who had her permanent resident card stolen in the UK. She fought for weeks to be allowed back into Canada. Now, several others have told CBC News similar stories, and for some, it's resulted in tens of thousands of dollars in debt. The CBC's Elise Skura has more.
Puna McMullen lost her permanent resident card while vacationing in Mexico and then got turned away at the airport.
I have a British passport. We're part of the Commonwealth. Why can I not come back to Canada?
And she's been living here for more than 2 decades.
I just can't believe they didn't even let us come back to the freaking country.
Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada then approved her application for an emergency travel document. It sent her to TT Services run by VFS Global. Canada contracts the company to help non-citizens. It took McMullen's passport so that it could return it with a temporary visa inside. Then McMullen and her husband waited in Mexico. Days became weeks, 4 weeks to be exact, all while racking up expenses.
I'd say about 40.
That's $40,000. A few months later, Wei Yu's PR card was stolen in the same country, and he also dealt with VFS Global.
No updates. I called daily. No one knew where my documents were.
After 3 weeks, Yu took matters into his own hands. He reached out to VFS Global executives on LinkedIn and got his passport sent out the next day, but not before missing something important back in Montreal.
I was actually scheduled for my citizenship test.
CBC reached out to VFS Global to find out what's behind these delays. It told us only the Government of Canada can control processing times or prioritize urgent applications. IRCC could not give CBC a response by deadline, but Yu says he did eventually get to take his test. Elise Skura, CBC News, Ottawa.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. If you like the World Report podcast, please follow us and tell a friend. It helps spread the word. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, the sun's going to come out and be quite nice today in Winnipeg and across most of Manitoba. In fact, lots of sunshine. Welcome to Tuesday morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio on CBC. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or maybe on YouTube, where we just caught a glimpse of a beautiful sky this morning. So gorgeous. Get ready for that sun. This hour on the program, if you're looking for something to do this Easter weekend beyond the dinner with the fam, the Royal Aviation Museum in Winnipeg might have an answer. Stay tuned. We're going to tell you about a special hunt going on there. In addition, the Bank of Canada, as you've been hearing on World Report, is facing a big decision on interest rates this week. We're going to talk more about what this could all mean for the Canadian economy and what's expected. And then we also have Ryan Tumulty in the first hour to walk us through what debate prep is looking like for the federal leaders. So stay tuned for all of that. And of course, local news. Headlines in a moment. Heather Wells is here with that update.
Well, the developer who owns the LeMay Forest says the province is going to have a fight on its hands over expropriation. Yesterday, the Premier announced the 23 acres in St. Norbert would be turned into a provincial park. John Winthrop was with crews at the LeMay Forest where they were chopping down more trees. He was startled by Wabkinu's announcement because he says the Premier has been ignoring him for months. A privacy expert says she has not seen a breach that matches the Pembina Trail School Division hack anywhere else in Canada. Almost 1 million files ended up on the dark web after a hacker didn't get the ransom it had demanded. The files include names, addresses, payroll data, and other personal information. Former Ontario Privacy Commissioner Anne Kavukian says institutions have to do more to protect their data from hackers. I'll be back with more Manitoba News at 6:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
That was quite a surprise with LeMay Forest yesterday. We started the show talking with folks that had concerns, and the Premier actually was doing a full press conference about something unrelated, and then at the end sort of dropped this announcement. So if you want to read more about it, you can read analysis. It's at our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba. And of course, Heather will have through the news some more reaction. Well, there's going to be quite a reaction, I think, to the forecast today. Yesterday was nasty in the morning when that snow came down, Abby.
Definitely, and we have a switch today. We have more of like a mix of sunny conditions, some clouds. Temperatures will definitely be getting to 10 degrees in some areas, while the north will be staying cold and remaining below freezing point. Right now, Winnipeg, we're hovering between 0 and 1. Partly cloudy skies we're seeing across the city and even into surrounding areas. As we move through the day, the clouds will give way to mostly sunny skies and expect it to be as bright as you can get. Lots of sunshine. Temperatures will warm up to 8 degrees for Winnipeg today. The winds will stay light. That will be coming from the west. That's making it mild and pleasant for the afternoon overall. And then late in the evening, we're going to see some cloudy conditions roll in. Similar conditions we're seeing in the southern regions, while up north we're seeing temperatures between -10 and -15 at this time. Highs will be close to -5 and -6 for that region. So in summary, it's a mixed bag of weather from sunny spells and warmer conditions in the southern region to cooler and cloudy temperatures up north. Right now, Winnipeg, we are at 0.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Let's get into what's going on in our morning commute with May McKillop. Good morning, May.
Good morning, and good morning to all of our listeners. Nothing major to report today, but I do want to let you all know about a closure happening on northbound Pembina. So all northbound left-turning lanes are closed for construction turning onto Stafford. So you might want to plan a little extra time in your commute for that. Anything else that comes up in the commute today, give me a call and I'll pass that message along to your fellow listeners. The number to call, 204-788-3093.
So I just want to drop something in here by way of explanation because we want to pass this along to you. During federal elections, you might know this if you're a longtime listener to CBC, but during elections, the Canada Elections Act obliges CBC Radio to make airtime available for purchase by all registered political parties. So, of course, not all parties will exercise their right to buy time. But as a result, you're going to hear advertising on behalf of parties and sometimes one party. It depends who has exercised their right to buy time. So the time is equally offered and available to all parties. But these ads are something we've had in the past. It is, as we said, an obligation we have here at CBC Radio. And so you may hear some of that in the weeks ahead as we get to April 28th. It is now 6:15. Though, and we are counting down to something else. We're counting down to Easter on the weekend, and there's something special happening at the Royal Aviation Museum. They're hosting a scavenger hunt. So to hear all about it this morning, up early, Terry Slobodian is with us, CEO of the museum. Thanks for being with us via Zoom.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
So I love the idea of a scavenger hunt among all the planes. Tell me a little bit about how it actually works.
Yes. So each child receives a clue sheet when they arrive, and then what they do is they follow the clues throughout the museum through the aircraft to find the hidden lettered eggs among the displays. They record a letter to solve an Easter-themed mystery phrase on this clue sheet that they're provided with, and then after completing the hunt, the children report to the treat station for a reward, and all children receive a goodie bag with a special Easter item and chocolates and candy.
How long have you guys been doing this?
Well, we opened in May of 2022, so this will be our third Easter.
What do you hope that the kids might learn about aviation while they're making their way through the hunt?
Well, one of the points of feedback that we got last time was the kids were rushed through. We had 4 time slots. This time we had 3 time slots. And what the families wanted was to be able to have the opportunity to take a more prolonged look at the exhibit panels, the aircraft, so that it really becomes a learning experience, that they're long enough to learn quite a bit about aviation history in Western Canada.
What areas of the museum are free to explore for the kids? Like, does the hunt happen all over the museum?
All over the museum. All the public areas, of course.
Yeah. Once all the eggs are found, then they've solved the mystery. Are there prizes involved? Just to reiterate that.
Yes, there's a goodie bag that they get with Easter items and chocolates and candy.
Lovely. So how many tickets are left this morning? We're trying to entice people to check out the museum.
Well, I know we've sold 744 as of yesterday,
What?
so they're going
That's crazy.
really fast. So they're available on our website, royalaviationmuseum.com, and people can choose, that they want to come at 10 o'clock, 12:15, or 2:30. So they can, if one slot is booked, they can choose another one, but hopefully they'll get their first choice. Fantastic.
Thanks so much I had no idea there was hundreds of kids like that. Sounds like you guys are onto something with a popular event, Terry. So good luck this weekend. Enjoy. Thanks for being up early and being on CBC with us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Take care. That is Terry Slobodian, CEO of the Royal Aviation Museum in Winnipeg. So their Easter scavenger hunt, if you want to check it out this weekend, looking for something to do with the kids, it is happening April 19th. There's slots left you can sign up for, as Terry just mentioned, and you can go and read more information about it at royalaviationmuseum.com.
My name is Bond, James Bond. He's the world's most famous super spy and one heck of an advertising pitchman. From high-end watches to beer and breakfast cereals, 007 has been busy. Even the Bond villains have been hawking products.
Oh, Mr. Energizer Bunny, out for a stroll.
Brand, James Brand, on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly. Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland. And on CBC Listen.
6:18 is the time right now, and next airtime that is made available for messages provided by registered political parties as required by the Canada Elections Act.
Oh, I can't keep up with the news.
Who can?
Take this federal election. Looked like Poilievre was going to win, and now Carney's got a big lead?
Yeah, but even if he wins, we need the NDP there to fight for us.
Agreed. They got us a bunch of good stuff. Dental care, pharmacare, childcare.
I just don't want to wake up after the election and realize there's no one there to speak up for us regular folks.
Same. I'm sticking with the NDP. Sounds like we're going to need them.
Authorized by the registered agent for the New Democratic Party of Canada.
The proceeding was a paid political advertisement. It is 6:20 right now. It's mainly clear, -1 in Winnipeg. We're heading for a high of 8. Lots of sunshine, and some of the biggest names in Canadian music are paying homage to Joel Plaskett. And we hope we get some music on for him today, because we have a new tribute album that was made in secret without the Halifax Rockers' knowledge. So we're going to be hearing some of that music coming up a little bit later in the program. But coming up next on the show, the Bank of Canada is facing a tough decision on interest rates tomorrow. As you may have heard on World Report, it's hard to predict whether they're going to cut the rates, hold off, given the up and down of the financial markets right now. And of course, the federal election, President Trump's unpredictable tariffs, all kinds of things weighing on this. Viet Vu's here to analyze what might be coming, Manager of Economic Research at the DES Toronto Metropolitan University. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Marcy. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, thanks for being with us again. So I don't want your job having to try to analyze all this. But do you think the Bank of Canada, what do you think they're going to do? Are they going to keep things steady, or might they have a surprise move for us?
Trust me, I don't like it any more than you do. I just came back from the Bahamas yesterday and just being thrown into the fray of things. But look, the Bank of Canada has been really good at telegraphing what it's going to do in the medium run up until now. A couple of weeks ago, they signaled that the usual clarity that they've operated in, the so-called forward guidance, a tool that was developed to respond to the '08 crisis, is not going to be there anymore. So anything can actually happen. But my guess is that if inflation remains steady, then the bank would bias towards maintaining the policy stability, that is to continue on that path of easing interest rates to its more usual range after successfully fighting off a historically high level of inflation. But since they'll be looking at broad economic indicators and probably Donald Trump's true social feed, anything can still happen. It's going to be a game time decision. I'll quickly mention as well that the 2.6%, which is where inflation was last month, where many are expecting inflation to hover around this month as well, continue to be well within their target band of where the bank targets and influence inflation into between 1% to 3%.
What do you look at, Viet-Vu? Like, what do you actually look at to try to determine what might happen tomorrow? Do you look at COVID times and what they did? Because it's a little bit similar with uncertainty, but yet it's not exactly the same.
I think it's totally different. And it's one of those where there really isn't a playbook to follow in this instance. The Bank of Canada's job, and they only really have one job, is to provide price stability. And it's a heck of a difficult job right now because of all of these inconsistency. That means that a huge chunk of goods coming into the country doesn't have consistent pricing. And so that makes it really, really tough. On top of it, though, inflation, while still playing a central role, is not the only thing that the bank wants to pay attention to. And this is where it's really different from pandemic times. With the pandemic times, the economic downturn first came, and then they had to deal with inflation. Now they might have to deal with both. Everyone is losing confidence in a strong economy, and the bank's main tool to fight inflation and keeps prices stable work a lot better with a strong economy. And so investors, business, and Canadians are really looking for certainty in this uncertain environment. And the Bank of Canada is really the only institution that can provide a bit of that stability in these economic times.
In your view, how real is the risk of a recession right now?
Look, recessions, and this is probably a definition that you've heard thousands of times now, is commonly understood as 2 consecutive quarters of declines in GDP. In reality, it's actually much more complex. When us economists determine when a recession starts and ends, we look at broad ranges of economic indicators because it's about the general decline in economic activity. So GDP certainly plays a role, but so do jobs. And the signals there isn't looking as good as it did just 6 months ago. That red hot job market coming out of the pandemic is gone, and we're already seeing the first signs of a tariff-induced loss of jobs in manufacturing in Ontario and other places, including in Winnipeg as well. And we also look at the investment climate, that is to mean the financial markets. And if anyone has been paying attention to the stock market over the past 2 weeks, the situation there also looked quite dire. Sure, it has recovered somewhat after historic losses, consecutive losses that really signal a structural issue of Donald Trump, a man-made disaster, if you will. And so I will admit to being a little bit worried about a recession happening because a massive reduction in trade will mean reductions in economic activity that will make Canadians poorer, that will make Canadians' lives harder. But the reality of whether that recession happens or not, and how deep and how long that recession will be, depends on one man, and that man's name is unfortunately Donald Trump.
Well, as we've been hearing on World Report as well, to add to your analysis, the effects of the tariffs likely also won't be felt fully until like summertime is when we're kind of months ahead, is when we might actually see what's happening, even though tomorrow's an important day.
Right, but the contention is that we already actually feel the effect of the tariffs. I go grocery shop often, and whenever I do, I usually buy a bunch of green onions because it's a wonderfully versatile ingredient for me to cook with. A couple of months ago, most of those green onions came from the States. Now, grocery stores are actually stocking them from Mexico, at least the local ones that I live in Toronto do. And that now paying 20 to 30 cents higher just for that same bunch of green onions. Because it's not just the fact that the tariff isn't there, it's the threat and the inconsistency. When grocery stores order produce, let's say 6 months ahead, and they want to commit to a long contract, to be able to pay a stable price. They can't do that anymore with these chaotic policy environment. And so they have to shift supply chains, and that has a price impact. But I do think that the impact, right, that many Canadians feel is much, much more visceral. A lot of us can't buy Californian wines anymore, can't buy bourbon anymore. A lot of us has canceled our trips down south to the States. And each of those decisions, and that's a lot of conscious choices you have to make to shift how you live your life. And I don't know about you, but I don't want that sort of just clouding over my head whenever I go grocery shopping, whenever I'm planning a trip. I don't think that's healthy for me long term.
Thank you very much for being with us this morning. I appreciate having you on the program.
Thank you.
As Viet Vu, Manager of Economic Research at the DAIS at Toronto Metropolitan University. Well, we're coming up to news time at 6:30. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC's Information Radio. And we do have time to slide in a little bit of music. As I was mentioning, some of the biggest names in Canadian music are paying homage to Joel Plaskett on a new tribute album. It was made in secret without the Halifax Rockers' knowledge. Kind of cool. Wonder what he thinks of it. The double album titled Songs from the Gang is a celebration of Joel Plaskett. It features covers from 22 artists like Sloan, the Sheepdogs, the Arkells, Mo Kenny, Jen Grant. This is Julian Taylor's cover of Plaskett's Compete with Loneliness.
The days are high, the nights are low. I listen to the radio, and I might hear someone I know. Your hair is brown, your eyes are blue. This much I know, these things are true. You've been gone so long, I don't know what to do with myself when you call. Staring at a crumbling wall, feeling like a wrecking ball. Where you've been, don't make me guess. You know, my dear, I must confess, can't compete with loneliness. The weeks are months, the months are years. The days are rolling down like tears. Is loneliness your only fear? Did you lose your way? Did you lose your mind? Did you lose the nerve to press rewind? Spinning forward all the time. Is that you down the hall, staring through the bedroom wall, swinging like a wrecking ball? Where you've been, don't make me guess. You know, my dear, I must confess, you can't compete with loneliness. Can't compete with loneliness.
Pretty cool birthday gift, huh? Julian Taylor's cover of Joel Plaskett's Compete with Loneliness. And it is the double album, from the double album titled Songs from the Gang, a celebration of Joel Plaskett. And it was made as a surprise for Plaskett, who turns 50 on April 18th. So coming up this weekend. Right now, on April 15th, I can tell you that we're going to have a mainly sunny day all across Manitoba. If you need us on the morning drive, give us a call, 788-3093. Oh, Stafford at right around Taylor and the turnoff there. And yeah, Pembina's all down to well, you have a couple lanes, but the turning lane is blocked there, so it's a big mess. So take that easy, maybe avoid it. Frankly, don't turn there. 788-3093 with any updates. Coming up, we have updates on business news. Christelle Ramlakan joins us live after your 6:30 CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 6:30. It's a little chilly out there. It's -1. And we're not going to see normal, not yet. Sunny today, a high of 8. The normal high this time of year is 10. The developer who owns the Lemay Forest says it will fight the province's plan to expropriate the St. Norbert property. The Premier has announced those 23 acres will be turned into a provincial park. John Winthrop was with crews at the Lemay Forest. They had just started chopping down more trees. Winthrop was caught off guard by the province's plan.
Shocked that nobody from any government official has ever reached out to us on that. We reached out to them multiple times. I reached out to Premier Wab Canoe going back 18 months looking for advice, looking for direction, looking for help on this matter. He completely ignored us all along.
Winthrop says the expropriation will be very expensive for Manitoba taxpayers. He says the developer wanted to honor the site believed to have been an old cemetery. Winthrop says no level of government responded to that idea. Now, one of the protesters with the coalition to save LeMay Forest says she cried when she heard news of the expropriation. Louise May has spent months trying to block the development through demonstrations and court battles. She says it was quite the emotional swing yesterday as the developer had just started chopping down more trees.
Huge sensation of relief that because I thought, we had maybe come to the end of the road of possibilities. When they started cutting, I felt the least hopeful I had ever felt.
May says it's a great example of the power of grassroots rising together. Manitoba Hydro says it did not intend to renew a pair of U.S. export contracts set to expire at the end of this month. The contracts with Northern States Power added up to commitments to send 500 megawatts of power south of the border. Premier Wab Canoe has ordered Hydro not to renew them. Peter Chura, who speaks for Manitoba Hydro, says the Crown Corporation was already planning to let them expire.
We've known for some time now that these contracts were expiring and they wouldn't be renewed. So that capacity that's coming back into our system, we've already accounted for in our planning.
The Premier's office says the order was made to ensure no other new export contract would be signed. People in rural Manitoba hope health care in their communities isn't forgotten in this federal election. Staffing shortages are part of ER closures and long wait times right across the province. CBC's Rosanna Hempel reports.
The emergency room at Morris General Hospital south of Winnipeg closed indefinitely in 2023. For Megan Adams, healthcare is top of mind this federal election.
I think it would all come down to accessibility.
Adams lives with multiple sclerosis, but it was her son's allergic reaction to kiwi that raised the stakes. They had to drive 45 minutes to Boundary Trails Health Center near Winkler.
It was scary.
The Society of Rural Physicians is calling on all federal parties to commit to creating a national rural health workforce strategy. Dr. Gavin Parker is president of the society.
One of the major reasons why physicians leave rural areas is they just don't feel that their skill set is meeting the demands of the community.
He says rural health care will only get worse without a plan. Rosanna Hempel, CBC News, Morris.
All the major parties are drumming up support today. In Montreal, the French language leaders debate is set for tomorrow in that city. And that has Liberal leader Mark Carney starting his day in the Montreal suburbs. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, New Democrat leader Jagmeet Singh, and the Bloc's Yves-François Blanchet, as well as the Green Party's Jonathan Pedneau, are also in and around the Montreal area. The English language debate is scheduled for Thursday, also in Montreal. We'll be keeping an eye on the latest inflation data today. Statistics Canada will release price growth figures for March in the next hour. The country is just beginning to feel the effects of U.S. President Donald Trump's trade war. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. A Winnipeg student says not much can be done now that his information may have ended up on the dark web. The group behind the breach at Pembina Trail School Division released more than 1 million files after failing to find a buyer for that information. Sebastian Kelly is in grade 10.
Obviously, I'm not an IT professional, but what I can say is that this information, should have been protected a little bit better.
Kelly says while the students had their personal data leaked, staff had more sensitive data exposed in the hack. The leaked files include payroll information, credit card statements, and photos of passports. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thanks very much, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get in now to our regional forecast from CBC. Here is Abby Adeyemi.
Good morning once again. We are looking out for a mix of sunny conditions, some clouds across the province, mild weather down south. It's going to be chilly up north. In Winnipeg and the Red River Valley region, we're looking at temperatures around 0 at this point. It is clear outside. The sun is about to make its appearance. Once it does, we will be having mostly sunny conditions today. We warm up to close to 10 degrees in the city with light, the winds will be light, becoming breezy from the southeast as we get into the evening, and some cloud cover will roll in later today. Similar conditions we're seeing in the Pembina Valley region. We're seeing temperatures at this point. We're looking at temperatures around -3. It's also clear out there. Expect sunny conditions. Highs will be close to 10 degrees for that part of the province. In the western part of the province, Brandon sitting at -3 at this time. Clear skies you have. Today will be sunny. Some cloud cover will move in later. You get some light winds from the southeast, and you will be seeing that high also close to 10. In the Parkland region, -3. Sunny day ahead also. High around 11 degrees. Gimli, good morning to you. You are at 0 at this time. Clear skies you have. Expect light winds and some clear skies as you start your day. Sunny conditions also in the forecast. Highs for the Interlake region. We'll be seeing it get close to 8. You'll be hovering between 7 and 8 in some areas. Up north, we're looking at flim-flam on the part. This time, -4. Partly cloudy skies you have. Expect some cloudy conditions to roll in. High will be around 4 degrees. Thompson is at -11 at this time with clear skies. The sun is about to make its appearance also in that part of the province. Once that happens, expect sunny conditions, but the clouds will be rolling in the afternoon. You only warm up to 3 degrees for folks in Thompson. And then good morning to our friends in Churchill. You are at -9 at this time. You're still having that light snow from yesterday still falling. Expect more like the light snow and cloudy conditions today. High will only get to 7 degrees. So, Marcy, summary today, the southern regions will experience sunny skies and mild conditions with light breeze. And then as we head into the northern part of the province, the weather will be chillier, though we see some clear skies and then light snow in places like Churchill. So it's much colder with light snow up there. Overall, mild conditions down south. And Winnipeg at this point, we're still at 0, aiming close to 10 degrees today.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
To the morning commute now with May McKillop, who's popped back in. Hello.
Hey. It's been a quiet morning, no calls on the commuter line, but I want to let you all know about a road closure, turning road closure. This is northbound Pembina. All northbound left turning lanes onto Stafford are closed for construction. Now, that closure happens until the 17th, so just a couple more days. You might want to consider that in your commute today if you are a Pembina commuter.
Don't go there, is my advice.
Yeah, just find a new route.
It's the most annoying thing because you just come under it's the overpass around Jubilee there and all that. And then you'll realize you'll be stuck in the lane and you'll be like, why am I stuck here? Why is it so far back? And then people get hyper. It is just bad times.
It's one of those ones. And both turning lanes they're down until the 17th. So a couple days, if you can plan a new route, I'd recommend that for sure. Anything else going on in the commute, give me a call and let me know. I'll pass that message along. The number to call, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, May.
You're welcome.
22 minutes to 7 and time for business news. So Crystal Lee Ramlakan, hello to you.
Hi, good morning, Marcy.
So President Trump says he's considering help for auto companies now that are hit by tariffs. What are the details of what he said?
Yeah, so Trump is suggesting that he may temporarily exempt some auto manufacturers from tariffs that he actually previously imposed to give car makers time to adjust their supply chains. So, of course, this is part of the president's plan to get automakers to relocate production from places like here in Canada and Mexico to the U.S. And, CBC has not confirmed this yet, but Reuters is reporting, and we're seeing reporting out of Japan, reporting that Honda is considering switching some car production from Canada and Mexico to the U.S. So Trump's possible exemption hints at yet another reversal of tariffs after the import taxes have panicked financial markets and have raised deep concerns about a possible recession. So last week, after a bond market sell-off pushed up interest rates on U.S. debt, Trump announced a 90-day pause on broader tariffs against dozens of countries and then set a baseline of 10%. And he has also temporarily exempted some electronics from higher tariffs. So yesterday, Trump said he doesn't change his mind, but he says he's flexible. And the Trump administration is also kicking off investigations into imports of pharmaceuticals and semiconductors and has started investigations into imports of copper and lumber. And of course, Canada does export some of those things to the U.S.
How are markets responding?
So Trump's moves have fueled a sense of uncertainty and confusion about his intentions and end goals. So the S&P 500 was up slightly yesterday, but it is still down nearly 9% this year. However, the relaxed tariffs on smartphones and other electronics did help drive market gains yesterday. But if those tariffs do eventually, come into effect, they could ultimately more than double prices for U.S. customers of products coming from China. But Apple and other technology companies did lift Wall Street yesterday. And while stocks gained, confusion still lingers around the trade war with China, of course. So U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick says tariffs on semiconductors and some electronics are probably coming in a month or two. And then looking at the economy here, we're going to get the latest inflation numbers this morning from Stats Can. And then tomorrow, the Bank of Canada is set to make its next interest rate decision. Economists are split on whether the central bank will decrease or hold on rates, even as signs of economic weakness emerge. So the Bank of Canada has cut its key interest rate by 2.25 percentage points since last June. But, the question really is going to be, will it be enough if tariffs remain in place?
Yeah, we just had a full interview about it, actually. So it's, I hate to say this, but it really is anyone's guess moving forward. I mean, we're in unprecedented territory. So let's, before you look at markets this morning, talk about something completely different. A lot of people have been sharing their experiences on social media about Coachella. But how can people afford to go?
Yeah, so as concert ticket prices soar, more than half of the general attendance goers are buying tickets through payment plans. So Billboard is reporting that more than 60% are using installment plans. And of course, using this kind of deferred payment system does cost money. So you have to pay a $41 fee, and then festival goers are able to break up the cost of the $600 general admission fee into separate payments. And the cost of travel, accommodations, food and drink, and of course, the outfits often add thousands to the bill. So many are turning to installment plans if they want to be a part of the tens of thousands of people who flock to the California desert each year. So in the last 10 years, the cost of a Coachella ticket has soared by almost 40%. And the number of attendees using payment plans has gone from just 18% in 2009 to, of course, 60% now. But you know what? It's not the only festival that does this. Similar payment options are also offered by other festivals such as Lollapalooza, Electric Daisy Carnival, and Rolling Loud.
I've never heard of that. Payment plans for that. And then a few weeks ago, we were talking about payment plans for like food delivery apps and such. And wow, that could really all add up, couldn't it? Mm-hmm. What's going on in the markets this morning?
So in Europe, stocks are trading higher right now. Germany is up, the UK is up, France is up. In Asia, markets are mostly rising. So Japan is up, Shanghai is up, Hong Kong is up. Oil is down 20 cents to 61.55 US per barrel. Gold is down $9.20 to $3,218.20 US per ounce. And the dollar is up 0.08 of a cent to 72.2 cents US.
All right, thanks, Crystal.
Thanks, Marcy.
We'll talk to Crystal again tomorrow morning. She's a regular on our program. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC. Next airtime made available for messages provided by registered political parties is required by the Canada Elections Act.
A lot of us really don't want Pierre Poilievre to win this election. But the more I hear about Mark Carney, the more I worry. He's planning tax cuts for the rich and health care cuts for the rest of us. Here's the thing. We know we can count on the NDP. They've always fought for us, and we need them in Ottawa more than ever. Canada works best when the NDP's there. We just gotta vote for them. Authorized by the registered agent for the new Democratic Party of Canada.
The proceeding was a paid political advertisement. Time right now is 6:45 a.m. And next on the show, a little bit of music for our Tuesday morning as we wait for the sun to really take hold. It's going to be a beautiful day today, a high of 8 degrees, lots of sunshine, and lighter winds than yesterday. Wow, the winds yesterday were surprising. We knew they'd be strong, but they started blowing the snow around. It was really wet and really snowy in the morning for a couple of hours there. It was downright unpleasant. But then it did calm down by the end of the day. Today's going to be much different. So wind today is only up to 15 kilometers per hour. Well, I mentioned music. Here's Winnipeg's Field Guide with Life I Wanted.
Woke up with the daylight after a good day and a long night. I'm tired, but it's alright. I'm living again. Loading up the rental and trying to be gentle with my sister on the telephone. She's feeling down again. I got the life that I wanted, and I'll have some time in August. You're out of my sight, but you're sure on my mind. I promise. Just missed the pool hour, so I settled for a hot shower, a single cigarette and a happy hour all to myself. Tomorrow hit the highway, Denver, then an airplane, Calgary, then a time change, and I'll be back at home with you. I got the life that I want. Sometime in August, you're out of my sight, you're sure on my mind, I promise. And when I'm away, I hope you don't feel like it's part-time, babe. Yeah, when I'm away, I hope you don't feel like it's part-time, babe. I got the life that I wanted, and I'll have some time in August. You're out of my sight, but you're sure on my mind. I promise. You're out of my sight, but you're sure on my mind. I promise.
Field Guide and Life I Wanted on CBC. It's 11 minutes to 7 o'clock on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for being with us this morning. More to come. Mainly clear, -1 in Brandon, clear -3, and in Thompson, mainly clear as well, and -11.
Breaking news happens anywhere, anytime.
Police have warned the protesters repeatedly, get back.
CBC News brings the story to you as it happens.
Hundreds of wildfires are burning.
Be the first to know what's going on and what that means for you and for Canadians.
This situation has changed very quickly.
Helping make sense of the world when it matters most. Stay in the know. CBC News.
Now, I love a bellwether riding, and I want to mention that on Thursday we're going to be right in the middle of one. So our show's going to be live in Winnipeg South. This is a new name for that riding. It's think Fort Richmond, deep into past the perimeter into LaSalle, so Winnipeg South. And we're going to be live at the Tim Hortons. This is on Pembina Highway at Killarney. So we hope you can join us. We've invited all the candidates to be there, and yes, we're choosing it to be there because it is a bellwether riding. What does that mean? That means that you folks that vote out on Winnipeg South, what do you know that the rest of us don't? Because the way that you vote is usually how the government goes. And that actually is statistically goes way back. So, and you vote different ways. So you've had a Liberal incumbent there in Winnipeg South for the last 10 years. Before that, you had a Conservative for many years. And so it's gone back and forth, mostly between the Conservatives and the Liberals. So how will that riding go this time around. On Thursday, it's all about Winnipeg South. If you want to join us, we'll see you at the Tims, at Pembina, at Killarney. You can also leave questions for candidates on our listener line at 788-3205. It is 10 to 7 right now, and let's talk about what the leaders are going to be doing. We're now just 2 weeks away from the federal election campaign, and a lot of people are watching what's going to be happening this week, because this week is debate week in Canada. So tomorrow, the federal leaders will square off in the French language debate, as you've been hearing, and then Thursday, the leaders will go in the English debate. Both debates are happening in Montreal, and to look at what to expect and what's at stake for the leaders, Ryan Tumulty's here, political reporter with the Toronto Star, and he's here with our regular feature Ottawa Report. Hi there, Ryan.
Morning.
So what do the leaders need to do in these debates? So let's start with Mark Carney.
Yeah, I think for Mark Carney, his fundamental goal has to be do no harm. These debates are a big platform. Mark Carney is leading in most national polls. It looks like he could be headed towards a majority government. And if that's the case, you don't want to screw up. That's the one thing you don't want to do. Whether you win the debate is an open question, but you definitely don't want to lose it. And so I think that's what he's going to do. I think the Conservative leader, he has to show himself ready to be prime minister. He has to shake up the current contest. And he maybe has to get people thinking more about affordability issues, those sorts of questions where he leads, rather than the threat of Donald Trump, where Mark Carney is seen as the best choice.
In terms of Mark Carney and the French debate, there's a whole lot of talk about whether or not that could hurt. And what's your take on that? Because his French is obviously not the strongest.
Yeah, his French is obviously not the strongest. He's acknowledged it a few times now. I'll say this, he did a very large television show in Quebec on the weekend called Tout le monde en parle. It regularly tracks 1 million viewers in Quebec, which is, of course, a big audience there. And he did okay. Made a couple of nods to Quebec culture. Surprised, I'm not a native French speaker, but I've talked to people who are and say that, he made the right nods to Quebec's culture in a way that I think maybe resonated there. I think also, whereas language and culture are always such huge issues in this election, I think this time out, Quebecers are really more concerned about the threat to Canadian culture and Quebec culture that America represents, as opposed to the threat that the rest of Canada might represent.
What kind of attacks do you think we're going to see in the debate? Obviously, Mark Carney is leading in the polls, so he's going to be the one that, and is obviously the sitting prime minister right now. So he's going to be the one that's going to be on the receiving end of attacks. But what are they going to go at him about, do you think?
I think he'll face a lot of questions about his business background. So there's been lots of questions about Brookfield, the company he was chair of, Brookfield Asset Management, rather, that they used tax havens at times. Nothing illegal, certainly, but when someone hears a Canadian company was paying its taxes or registered down in Bermuda, that certainly raises some red flags, I think. So that, I think, is going to be one set of questions he'll face. I think he'll also, the attacks will try to draw him connected to Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau was deeply unpopular when he left office. Mark Carney has done everything he can to distance himself from Trudeau. And so I think it'll be a real challenge for the opposition leaders to try to link those two men together as much as possible.
Bloc leader Yves-François Blanchet says that the Green Party leader should not be, and there's co-leaders there, but that one of their leaders should not be allowed to take part in the debates. What do you make of that?
Yeah, so his rationale for that is essentially that the Greens qualified under two criteria. They have sitting MPs in Parliament, and they had pledged to run candidates in 90% of ridings. They actually pledged that they'd have candidates in 100% of ridings. But they made that pledge in early April. When the filing deadline came last week, they only have candidates in 68% of ridings across the country. They came up really short on the number of candidates they actually got on the ballot. That is why Yves-François Blanchet says they shouldn't be in the debate. Certainly, I think, the Bloc and the Greens are not battling out for the same ridings. There's just not that many places where, the Bloc would lose a riding because of the Greens. But I think Mr. Blanchet wants the attention. He wants more time in the debates. that would ultimately go to the Greens. And I think, the Greens really got in on kind of a technicality here. And there are a few people suggesting, I've seen some editorials and things like that they've kind of snuck their way into this debate.
How so? Just for listeners that may not know what you mean by that, by they kind of got in on a technicality?
Well, because while they pledged that they would run 100 candidates,
I see.
They're only doing it less than 70. They really didn't live up to the promise, I guess, that they made to the debate commission.
Let's talk about Jagmeet Singh. According to some of the polls, the leader of the NDP may not even win his own seat, in so much as polls are correct or incorrect. Of course, we always put that caution out there. But what do you think his role will be in the debates? What is his goal going to be in the debate?
Yeah, I think you've heard a change in tone from Mr. Singh. He doesn't tend to talk anymore about becoming prime minister. He tends to talk about being the conscience of Parliament. He tends to talk about being the person who can hold the Conservatives and the Liberals to account. So I think he's going to want to display that in the debate. I think he's going to want to be seen as just as aggressive on Mark Carney as he is on Pierre Poilievre, and really make the pitch to voters that you don't want any of these guys to be operating unchecked, and maybe push one of them into a minority situation.
Does it matter to voters, debates, do you think? What do we understand about that, whether or not it moves the needle?
Yeah, and certainly they can move the needle. There's certainly been lots of historical precedences where they had a big influence. Of course, the Brian Mulroney, John Turner exchange is super famous.
Yeah, we played it actually last week because it's such a, there's a lot of similarities between that time and now. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think this time out, normally the debates are when people start paying attention to an election, but Canadians have been paying attention to this election really from the beginning. I think because of the external threats from Trump, just people are more engaged with Canadian politics than they typically are at this stage. So maybe the debates have less opportunity to move people onto this, but certainly, it's a big stage.
All right, Ryan, thank you.
No problem.
That's Ryan Tumulty, a political reporter with the Toronto Star via Zoom. We reached him in Ottawa. So for coverage, Susan Bonner, Pia Chattopadhyay are going to bring full coverage of the federal leaders' English language debate and then analysis with leaders' Q&A sessions with reporters following the debate. Thursday, April 17th at 6 o'clock Central Time on CBC Radio right here and on the CBC News app. And then a special edition of Cross Country Checkup starts at 9:30 p.m. Central Time. Very cool. Ian Hannah-Mansing takes your calls to get reaction to the debate, as we're just over 10 days till Canadians vote in our crucial election. It is at 2 minutes to 7. Here's Heather Wells with news.
Manitoba's PC opposition says it's okay with Manitoba Hydro devoting more power to Canadian customers. Premier Rob Canoe has announced 2 expiring hydro export contracts with the U.S. will not be renewed. PC Hydro critic Lauren Stone says she's not opposed to that in principle, but wants to know how much that decision will cost. A privacy expert says she has not seen a breach that matches the Pembina Trail School Division hack anywhere else in Canada. Almost 1 million files ended up on the dark web after a hacker didn't get the ransom it demanded. The files include names, addresses, payroll data, and other personal information. We're going to hear from Ontario's former privacy commissioner who calls all of this appalling. Our next local news coming up at 7:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Pembina North at staff are going to lose some turn lanes there. 788-3093 if you see any other problems. Mainly clear in Winnipeg, -1. Going to go to a high of 8 with lots of sunshine. In the next hour of the show, our political panel, our partisan panel is in to talk about why they believe their party is the best to keep you safe. Our focus is crime today in our partisan panel, so that's live at about 7:45. In addition, right after 7 o'clock, 2 of Winnipeg's brightest minds have won big at a citywide science fair. Their experiments about whether public washrooms are dangerously loud. They are 13-year-old twins. Their research is getting some serious attention, and we'll meet them. Stay with us. Right now, though, here's CBC's World Report.
Today on The Current.
I feel we need a fair shake. I don't think we get a fair shake out here.
Voters in rural Canada are listening to what the parties are offering this election, but they often feel their needs are not being heard. Guest host Mark Kelly hears what rural communities want and why one-size-fits-all does not work for them on The Current. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. We will be keeping an eye on the latest inflation data. Statistics Canada will release price growth figures for March later this hour. The country is just beginning to feel the effect of U.S. President Donald Trump's trade war. Peter Armstrong has more.
It's been a pretty wild month for economic data. Volatility's taken over markets, fear of an escalating trade war is already impacting the real economy. But today's measure of inflation is like a snapshot of a simpler time. It wasn't tariffs pushing prices around, it was the end of a tax holiday. And on the flip side, it was gas prices dragging prices down. Tariffs were starting to roll out in March, but several exemptions softened that blow. Canada's retaliatory tariffs came into effect mid-month. But RBC economist Claire Fan says the real issue is that tariffs have a weird impact, driving up prices in the short term, but also deflationary as they drive down demand in the long term.
And that's the nature of the trade shock that we are in. It is inflationary and it is growth prohibitive. And those are at the opposite side of the mandate for a central bank.
But Fan says that impact of tariffs isn't expected to really show up in the data until this summer. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
Tariffs and international trade are the top priority for some Alberta farmers, and they're thinking about that as they consider who to cast their ballots for in this federal election. Party leaders have just 13 days to convince Canadians to vote for them. The CBC's Madeline Cummings has more from Edmonton.
Climbing into his tractor, grain farmer Shane Stridehorse is just a few weeks away from seeding fava beans in his fields northwest of Edmonton. With most Canadian pulses exported and a global trade war unfolding, he's worried.
What we really need is a government that's going to be willing to grow our international markets.
He says some farmers are considering swapping canola for barley in response to Chinese tariffs on Canadian canola oil. Fellow grain farmer Ron Kryko says he's voting Conservative, hoping Pierre Poilievre can break down trade barriers.
I think a lot of the farmers are just frustrated with what's been happening, and they want to change.
Kryko wasn't a fan of the carbon tax.
I don't know why you would tax something that is a necessity.
And even though Liberal leader Mark Carney got rid of the consumer carbon tax, that didn't win him over.
Well, they've had 10 years to prove themselves to be a worthy government.
Though international trade is top of mind for these grain farmers, it's not as important to Michael Verhoeven. He's the head grower at High Q Greenhouses and on the board of the Alberta Greenhouse Growers Association. He says since most industry growers sell to Canadian clients, they have different priorities.
Business management strategies the federal government has, like Agri-Stability, Agri-Invest, that they should be modernized and that they should be maintained.
All three farmers say they haven't heard agricultural issues discussed much during the campaign so far. Madeline Cummings, CBC News, Edmonton.
All parties are trying to drum up support in Quebec today. The French language debate goes tomorrow in Montreal. Liberal leader Mark Carney starts his day in the Montreal suburb of Saint-Eustache. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, and Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet are all expected to make announcements in Montreal. And Green Party co-leader Jonathan Pedneau will spend the day campaigning in his riding of Outremont. The leaders' English language debate happens Thursday night, also in Montreal. Susan Bonner and Piachetta Pata will bring you full coverage and analysis. That is Thursday, April 17th, 7 p.m. Eastern on CBC Radio and the CBC News app. Today marks the second anniversary of Sudan's civil war. It has killed tens of thousands of people and displaced millions more. EU and African Union countries are meeting in London to address the crisis. Foreign Minister David Lammy is hosting the conference.
The biggest obstacle is not a lack of funding, it's a lack of political will. Very simply, we have got to persuade the warring parties to protect civilians, to let aid in, and to put peace first.
As Anna Cunningham reports, advocates say today must be more than just talk.
Sudan's civil war exploded amid a power struggle, a split between the coup leaders, the army's chief, and the paramilitary rapid support forces, the RSF.
It is neglected, it is ignored,
says the UK's former Sudan ambassador, Nicholas Kay. He hopes this London conference with ministers from the EU and African Union will change that.
It is absolutely important now that there is a pathway to peace.
Neither warring faction is invited. Both sides accused of human rights abuses, including sexual violence and summary executions. Peace talks have repeatedly failed.
Sudan is the world's largest humanitarian disaster, largest hunger crisis.
Holud Hare, a Sudanese analyst, hopes this conference will not just become a talking shop. The World Food Programme warns that famine is spreading. The latest fighting has centred on Al Fasher, the capital city in North Darfur. The nearby Zamzam and Abu Shuk camps said to host some 700,000 displaced people. Recent satellite images appear to show fires burning in Zamzam camp, with reports of hundreds dead and injured after an RSF attack. Britain has pledged an extra $158 million in aid. It's hoped this conference will raise more funding. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
To Vietnam. A military band plays as Chinese President Xi Jinping lays a wreath at the Ho Chi Minh Mausoleum in Hanoi. Xi is on the second day of his two-day visit to the country. It's part of a tour of Southeast Asia to strengthen relations with China's neighbors. Xi is hoping to fill the trade vacuum in the region created by U.S. President Donald Trump's global tariffs. Exports are the main driver of Chinese economies, and Xi is feeling the pressure from the punishing Trump tariffs targeting China. Malaysia and Cambodia are the next stops on Xi's tour. Singapore has dissolved its parliament. General elections are now scheduled for May 3rd. It will be the first electoral test for Prime Minister Lawrence Wong. He took over as leader of the People's Action Party less than a year ago. The PAP is expected to win the most seats, but the party's popular support has been falling. The party has led Singapore since its independence in 1965. The cost of living and fears of a recession as a result of U.S. tariffs are expected to be top of mind for voters. The owners of a British Columbia ostrich farm are in federal court today. They are trying to save their herd of more than 300 birds. Those birds were ordered slaughtered over avian flu concerns. The CBC's Brady Strachan has more.
We're super happy. You can see they're all healthy.
That's Karen Asperson speaking just 2 months ago on the day she and her business partner won a court injunction halting the cull of hundreds of ostriches on their farm in the BC interior. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency ordered the herd killed after the farm tested positive for the avian flu virus last December. Asperson's relief and the ostriches' reprieve was short-lived. The CFIA appealed the injunction, and this week a federal court hearing will determine the fate of the flock. Katie Pasidney is Asperson's daughter.
What's at stake? To livelihood, irreparable harm and damage to our lives and animals that our hands have touched for 35 years.
The farm argues that after losing a few dozen birds, the rest developed herd immunity and no longer pose a public health risk. The CFIA declined an interview, but in a statement said a new variant of the avian flu virus was detected on the farm and depopulation is required, regardless of the bird's immunity status. The agency says continued transmission could lead to more severe strains of the virus for humans. The farm's fight to save its ostriches has attracted worldwide attention and supporters who see the kill order as an example of government overreach. If the court approves the cull, the ostriches will join the nearly 9 million domestic birds in BC that have died or been slaughtered due to avian flu since 2022. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Kelowna.
A moose migration is really something to see, and now may be your chance, thanks to a hit Swedish show. You can watch the majestic beasts during their annual spring migration to greener grazing pastures. The 20-day, 24-hour live stream has become very popular in Sweden. Nearly 1 million people tuned in its first year in 2019. Last year, they reached 9 million viewers. The migration and the live stream began a week ahead of schedule this year because of warmer weather. Remote cameras will capture the moose at every step of their way during their 300-kilometer journey northwest of Stockholm. And that is the latest national and international moose news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC's Information Radio. We're live on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Getting ready for a bright Tuesday morning. Look at that shot on YouTube. Just gorgeous. The sun coming through the buildings downtown. Sure didn't get a lot of sunshine yesterday, but we will today. Abby with the forecast in a moment. And I can tell you, across all of Manitoba today, we're going to have mostly clear skies. Well, this hour on the program, two of Winnipeg's brightest minds have won big at a citywide science fair. They're science experiments about whether public washrooms are dangerously loud. The experiment had some interesting results. It's garnering attention from the University of Manitoba. The best part is their 13-year-old twins. Two Einsteins in the making, joining us in studio momentarily. Also, later on this half hour, we have our partisan panel that's back. Our trio of Made in Manitoban veteran politicians are going to join us again. Today, we're going to talk about the different parties' approaches to crime and security and safety. So there were quite a number of announcements on the federal campaign trail. So we're going to have our panel take a look at that and defend why they think that their party has the best plan to keep you and your family safe. So stay tuned. That's coming up live at 7:45. Right now to Heather Wells. She's in our news center and she has more headlines on other stories. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the developer who owns the LeMay Forest says the province is going to have a fight on its hands over expropriation. Yesterday, the Premier announced the 23 acres in St. Norbert will be turned into a provincial park. John Winthrop was with crews at the LeMay Forest where they were chopping down more trees. He says he was startled by Canu's announcement because he says the Premier has been ignoring him for months. Well, as the federal election nears, people in rural Manitoba hope healthcare in their communities isn't forgotten. Staffing shortages are part of ER closures and long wait times right across the province. We're going to hear the experience of a mother in southern Manitoba coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
Abby, how's the weather?
I will tell you the skies are beginning to clear from south to north. Right now, Winnipeg, a chilly start though, but we're already seeing some clear conditions. The sun will make its appearance shortly as we get into the day. We'll see it break through those cloudy conditions. It's really shaping to be a bright and cheerful day. I will tell you that for sure. We warm up to a high of 8 degrees today, and Brandon is going to get to 10.
Nice.
Nice.
Love it. All right, let's get into what's happening in the morning commute. You can tell I'm a bit distracted. Sorry, I'm kind of excited about my first interview.
I'm really excited about
right?
this
These
interview.
guys?
Yeah.
Okay, you'll see why in a minute, listeners, and you'll hear why.
I'm an audio nerd, and it's very exciting for me. That's all I'll say. Keep listening.
It's a nice tease.
No calls in the commute.
It's quiet.
It's been a pretty
great.
quiet morning, so I think that's a good thing. But I will say there's one closure that I'm sure is getting in the way. Maybe if you're in the area, you want to call us with an update. This is northbound Pembina. All northbound left-turning lanes onto Stafford are closed for construction until the 17th. So keep an eye out for that area and call me with any other updates. 204-788-3093.
All right, let's talk to these two bright 13-year-olds that are sitting across from me in the studio that I've been anxious to hear all from because they've won multiple awards at this year's Winnipeg School Science Fair. The Science Fair has been running for 55 years at TechVoc Vocational Schools, and one of the big awards that these two won was the Junior Science Innovator Award. So I'm talking about twins Leo and Sammy Marcus. They conducted their experiment titled The Royal Flush, Are Washrooms Dangerously Loud? Their ongoing research asks the question, are public bathrooms dangerously loud for the ears? They are grade 8 students from Coal River Heights. So Leo is in studio with us now. Good morning, Leo.
Hello.
And Sammy's here as well. Hi, Sammy.
Hello.
So who named this the Royal Flush? Like, fun name. Where'd you guys get the name from?
A combination of a lot of time and general discussion. I believe it originally came from our father.
Got it.
We tried to make it catchy, and we thought that the Royal Flush was a good name, so that's why we chose it.
It's a fantastic name. How's it feel to win this big award?
It feels great. It's nice that we were able to get this award because it's for applications and implications on science fair projects and how it can be applied to the real world. And the point of our project is spreading this information that washrooms are dangerously loud. So getting this award really helps that, and it shows that what we can do to help this will actually help.
Yeah, and that's important because you're actually helping people. So people might think this is a cool concept, but this came, Sammy, because it was inspired by something that has to do with your own life, right? So tell me a little bit about why you wanted to look into this.
So I have sensory processing disorder, and when I was younger and when many people are very young, they find washrooms incredibly loud, and they find them scary or painful, and they do not want to be in those washrooms because of that, in public washrooms because of that. So what I wanted to see was I wanted to know if what I was feeling and what other people was feeling was actually founded in what the sounds the devices were making, or if it was just, it was loud, but it wasn't actually loud enough to cause the harm that we believed was going on.
Got it. So that was your whole, that's what you set out to achieve and look into. Sensory processing disorder. Does it mean that you're sensitive to all different types of sounds, or tell me a little bit about what that feels like?
It means I am sensitive to sounds as well as feelings and things I can see. Another thing that's really problematic for me is flashing. Okay. So things along those lines, if there's enough of it, so if it's very loud, if it's very bright, if it's very startling. And
overstimulating.
Yes.
Yeah.
If it's overstimulating, I have a hard time keeping control of myself.
And a bathroom's got flushing toilets, and then let me think here. There's running water, there's air dryers, right? Hand dryers. So how did you do this experiment?
So we would go to paper towel dispensers, hand dryers, urinals, and toilets. We would take out our decibel meter.
Show us that, because you brought it in there. Yeah.
This is the decibel meter.
Okay.
It records, we have it record the high sound for our 5 to 10 second duration, 30 to 35 centimeters away from the device. So we go up to these devices. We take out our tape measure and we measure 33 inches, which is the average 3-year-old ear height. We test our height at start of study, 53 inches. We tested average adult female ear height, which is 59 inches, and 63.5 inches, which is the average adult man ear height. So we would test all those with our decibel meter.
Got it.
And we would write it down, as well as the location, date, and what brand of device it was.
So you recorded all the variables.
Along with any variations.
Got it. So how many bathrooms did you visit, to do this experiment and over,
I don't know the exact number of bathrooms, because there are often multiples of each kind of device per bathroom, but we tested 289 devices and made 1,277 measurements.
Wow.
And that's divided by about 2 to 10 in total.
So I asked you guys this off the air, but I was curious, so I'm going to ask just again. So what did people think when you were standing in there with the device you're looking at here? Just so radio listeners know, it looks like it's just a small little size of a phone. Maybe it's got obviously a microphone at the top of it to record the sound data, but you're going to have to be holding this up and standing in the bathroom. So what were people thinking? Were you hiding in a stall when you were doing this, or what?
Along with the decibel meter, we also had a tape measure, a clipboard, lots of sheets of paper, and a pen with us, along with the bag to carry it all in.
So what did everybody think?
So the most interesting thing someone said to us is when we were testing at our school, someone walked into the bathroom, looked at us testing in front of one of the urinals, and said to one of their friends who was also entering the bathroom, "Bro's testing the urinals."
And then ran out as fast as he could.
I'm guessing so, yeah. You guys got to know, though, when to test. You were saying that you got to know when bathrooms are busy and not, and you kind of sneak in there and do your tests.
Yeah. So Saturdays and Sundays are very quiet compared to the rest of the days of the week. Plus, if you go at really weird hours, like not during lunch times or before people get into work or after, there's not that many people using the washrooms. And if you go to obscure places in the middle of nowhere in the University of Manitoba, or other places like community centers, residences, malls,
libraries.
You'll find a quiet spot.
Yeah, you find a quiet spot.
Now, you guys were looking for the loud spots, though. So what did you find with your research?
So we found that washrooms were dangerously loud for the human ear. Toilets were dangerously loud for short-term exposure.
Specifically tankless toilets.
Yeah. Urinals were dangerously loud over long exposure. Specifically flush urinals. Waterless urinals are mostly safe because they do not flush. And we also found that paper towel dispensers, roll paper towel dispensers were incredibly loud, but pre-fill paper towel dispensers were quiet and safe.
Okay.
And all hand dryers are dangerously loud.
All of them.
All of them.
Got it. Okay. So you guys tested different ones and you found all these findings. Did anything surprise you in the findings, Sammy?
I did not find anything particularly surprising. However, I found the fact that our hypothesis was so spot on so much of the time, surprising in a really scary way, because we hypothesized that these devices would produce sounds that would be dangerously loud, and that was so almost all of the time. There are specific kinds of devices that are safer, but almost every device had dangerously loud variables.
How do you hope it might help moving forward, especially given that for you with your sensory processing disorder, you know what that feels like to be overwhelmed and that, the dryers going and everything happening. How do you hope that your research might help in the future?
In the future, I hope our research can be used and applied in certain ways. There's already legislation in place for work safety, and you must have hearing protection if a sound is dangerously loud. Since people do work in bathrooms, I think that there should be hearing protection provided if those devices do produce sounds that are dangerously loud. Along with that, I hope that our recommendations to use tank toilets, waterless urinals, and pre-filled paper towel dispensers can be used by washroom planners, so anyone installing devices in a washroom in the future, so that more people are comfortable in those spaces.
What does it feel like, Leo, to have the University of Manitoba interested in what you and your brother have done here?
It feels great that the vice provost of
Equity and Inclusion
has been really interested in this and wants to improve. It's really nice that she asked for our data because we really want to spread this information and fix the issue.
How do you feel that it helps your brother? I mean, you guys are twins, you're brothers, you're working together. So this is effectively motivated by something that's going to help him.
Yeah. It's really important that people with hearing sensitivity, including Sammy, and just young people in general, have this hearing sensitivity. Have
the protection.
So it's less dangerous, less painful, and better for them.
I really love that you guys finish each other's sentences. That's a twin thing. Are you going to stay? Is science and interest in science and data? Like, do you see yourself doing this into the future? You guys, obviously, the future's bright for whatever you want to do. But what are you thinking?
I really enjoy science, especially science fair, and I would love to continue things like this and this project because I think science is helping our world and important.
How about you, Sammy?
I personally would not like to continue this project because I would like to spend less time in bathrooms. But other than that, I would like to continue in science, and I like science as a form of discovering how little humans actually know. So I want to learn how minuscule human knowledge actually is.
I love that. Before you guys go, because you brought in the sound device, I mean, the data and the numbers may not translate all that well over radio, but I'm just curious, like if I clap my hands, does that register? And like what number would... So should I do it again?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, ready? I'm going to go.
It says it is at 94.7 decibels. So if you did that for about 8 hours, it would cause hearing damage.
Oh, well, we will not be doing that for 8 hours.
More like 4 hours. But so our loudest hand dryer we measured was 128 decibels. So
wow, okay.
Imagine that for 10 seconds at that loud.
it would cause hearing damage nigh instantly.
Yeah. Thank you both for being here. Congratulations on all of your success in your experiment. Really nice to meet you both.
Thank you.
That is Leo and Sammy Marcus live in studio with us. They are twins. They are brothers. They're 13 years old. They've just won the Junior Science Innovator Award at this year's Winnipeg School Science Fair, and their research has garnered attention from the University of Manitoba. Next, airtime made available for messages provided by registered political parties as required by the Canada Elections Act.
Oh, I can't keep up with the news.
Who can?
Take this federal election. Looked like Polyev was going to win, and now Carney's got a big lead?
Yeah, but even if he wins, we need the NDP there to fight for us.
Agreed. They got us a bunch of good stuff. Dental care, pharmacare, childcare.
I just don't want to wake up after the election and realize there's no one there to speak up for us regular folks.
Same. I'm sticking with the NDP. Sounds like we're going to need them.
Authorized by the registered agent for the New Democratic Party of Canada.
The proceeding was a paid political ad. Time right now is 7:25 on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Marcy Marcusa. It's time for Morning Sports with Scott Regier. Hello to you.
Compliments on your clapping ability.
Did you hear
That's
the end
not
of
a
that
golf
interview?
clap there you have. That's worthy of a Jets playoff run.
My hands hurt a bit. I won't even lie. I was trying to make it loud.
It worked.
Let's start with hockey, where Canada continues to shine at the Women's World Championship.
Yeah, a 7-1 win over the host Czechs yesterday, Marcy. Marie-Philippe Poulin, as she does, scored and added an assist to lead the way. Captain Clutch, as she's known, is now just 4 points away from breaking Hayley Wickenheiser's all-time mark for points at the Worlds by a Canadian player. Meanwhile, there is another notable benchmark that's already been broken at this tournament. Highest attendance at a world championship not held in North America. One of Canada's other goal scorers, Kristen O'Neill, shared her thoughts on that.
I obviously know a lot of the fans aren't cheering for us, but, you know, we take the energy off of that too, despite them cheering for the other team. And I think it's great to see that many fans coming out for their team. So it's a great atmosphere out there.
Yeah, the attendance record's been set, Marcy, before we even enter the playoff stage of this tournament. Organizers anticipate more than 120,000 people will have watched by the time it ends. That's more than double the previous record, which was set in Finland. So just imagine if the Czechs had a competitive team. Meantime, Canada will learn today who they will face in the quarterfinals.
To the NHL, where Montreal had a chance to clinch a playoff spot last night. How'd they do?
Well, it went well for one Montreal player for sure, making his much-anticipated debut. Ivan Demidov, Marcy, scored a goal and an assist. He was electric after setting a goal-scoring record by a player under 20 years of age in Russia's Pro League. There's been plenty of hype around Demidov. When he arrived in Canada earlier this week, there's a big crowd at the airport to greet him. And that was at the airport in Toronto, not even in Montreal. Gives you an indication. As for the rest of the Habs last night, though, they couldn't get it done. They fell against lowly Chicago in a shootout, and that means, for now at least, they've failed to clinch that coveted playoff berth. Here's their coach, Martin Saint-Louis.
Well, I feel the guys are going through a time as a young team here. You don't get to practice these feelings of wanting something, and it's so close you can almost touch it. The stress level goes up, for sure. And when you want something so bad, you're working so hard, can you calm the mind through the storm so you can make reads and execute? And I feel like it's a little bit clouded right now with, what's at stake.
And what's at stake, Marcy, is Montreal's first playoff appearance in 4 years. They can do it the back doorway tonight. That's if Columbus loses its game as well this evening. Now, the Jets don't play, but there are 3 contests that could affect their playoff matchup. Minnesota, St. Louis, and Calgary are all in action. Now, there are too many possible scenarios to run through them all. The simplest, though, would be if both the Wild and Blues win. If that occurs, it would mean a St. Louis-Winnipeg first-round series. No thank you, is what I say to that. The Blues have been the hottest team in the league of late.
Yes, there are a lot of fans around town saying no thank you.
Yeah.
Although, if you got to go through a team, you got to go through a team at some point.
Eventually, right?
To get to the cup. Yeah. Let's move south of the border now. The U.S. College Football champions were honored at the White House.
The sound of the U.S. Marine Corps Band playing We Are the Champions in honor of Ohio State. Among the most excited to celebrate yesterday, Marcy, was U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, who earned his bachelor's degree at that university. Donald Trump was also on hand and called Vance the biggest Buckeye fan in his administration. Well, maybe so, but Vance showed why he wasn't a football player at the school. While trying to lift the championship trophy yesterday, he fumbled it and broke it in half. Later on social media, Vance quipped, "I didn't want anyone after Ohio State to get the trophy, so I decided to break it." I think he was joking.
Yeah, he was joking.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay,
thanks,
good.
Scott. Scott Regehr joins us each and every morning with sports, and he'll be back again tomorrow. I'm Marcy Marcusa. On the commute this morning, just be mindful that Pembina, northbound at Stafford, you've got reduced lanes there, 788-3093 if you have anything to share in the commute. And still ahead, we have our partisan panel that's back as we check in with them once a week leading up to the election. Today, we're talking about the different parties' takes on crime and security. So stay tuned. We'll look at the different what the different panelists have to say about their parties and why they believe they're best for your vote. Stay tuned. It's live still ahead. Right now, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is -1. A little bit on the cool side today, but otherwise beautiful. Lots of sun. A high today of 8. The developer who owns the Lemay Forest says the province is going to have a fight on its hands over expropriation. Yesterday, the Premier announced the 23 acres in St. Norbert would be turned into a provincial park. John Winthrop was with the crews at the Lemay Forest where they were chopping down more trees. He was startled by Wab Kinew's announcement because he says the Premier has been ignoring him for months.
Absolute shock. Wab Kinew is my elected official. I live in Fort Rouge. I can't get a meeting with them. I've been writing letters going back. Non-Indigenous private landowners simply have no right or are being excluded from any kind of process here.
Winthrop says the expropriation will cost Manitoba taxpayers dearly. He says the developer wanted to honor the site that's believed to have been an old cemetery. Winthrop says no level of government responded to that idea. Meanwhile, protesters who have spent months trying to block the development of the Lemay Forest are rejoicing. Louise May is with the Coalition to Save the Lemay Forest.
I cried tears of joy when I heard the news. The Minister of Heritage called me, and we've been in contact quite a bit in these last weeks, and I was just extremely pleased and thankful.
May says it is a great example of the power of a grassroots movement. People in rural Manitoba hope health care in their communities isn't forgotten in this federal election. Staffing shortages are part of ER closures and long wait times right across the province. CBC's Rosanna Hempel reports.
The emergency room at Morris General Hospital south of Winnipeg closed indefinitely in 2023. For Megan Adams, healthcare is top of mind this federal election.
I think it would all come down to accessibility.
Adams lives with multiple sclerosis, but it was her son's allergic reaction to kiwi that raised the stakes. They had to drive 45 minutes to Boundary Trails Health Center near Winkler.
It was scary.
The Society of Rural Physicians is calling on all federal parties to commit to creating a national rural health workforce strategy. Dr. Gavin Parker is president of the society.
One of the major reasons why physicians leave rural areas is they just don't feel that their skill set is meeting the demands of the community.
He says rural health care will only get worse without a plan. Rosanna Hempel, CBC News, Morris.
Now, all major parties are drumming up support today in Montreal. The French language leaders debate is set for tomorrow in that city. And that has Liberal leader Mark Carney starting his day in the Montreal suburbs, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, New Democrats Jagmeet Singh, the Bloc's Yves-François Blanchet, and the Green Party's Jonathan Pedneau are also in and around the Montreal area. The English language debate is scheduled for Thursday, also in Montreal. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. Manitoba's PC opposition says it's okay with Manitoba Hydro devoting more power to Canadian customers. Premier Wab Kinew announced 2 expiring hydro export contracts with the U.S. will not be renewed. PC Hydro critic Lauren Stone says she's not opposed to that principle, but wants to know how much that decision will cost.
We have a Crown Corporation that's $25 billion in debt. We have a Crown Corporation that's put in a rate application requiring $31 billion in maintenance and upgrades within the province of Manitoba. And so when the Premier came out with his announcement today, it really didn't sound like he thought through what those cost implications are.
The Premier says Hydro incorporated the expiring contracts into its new rate application. A privacy expert says she has not seen a breach that matches the Pembina Trail School Division hack anywhere else in Canada. Almost 1 million files ended up on the dark web after a hacker didn't get the ransom it demanded. The files include names, addresses, payroll data, and other personal information. Former Ontario Privacy Commissioner Ann Cavoukian says institutions need to do more to protect their data from hackers.
It's appalling and can cause so much damage. Unauthorized third parties can use your personal information to present you in a different light and also to give unauthorized third parties access to your personal information. They can go do whatever the heck they want with it.
A U.S. firm that investigates cybersecurity breaches says it has also found data from 31 other Canadian school divisions on the dark web. You can find more news updated throughout your day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thanks very much, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into our regional forecast now. Abby, what are the details today?
We're already seeing mostly sunny skies in some parts of the regions this morning. A few clouds still spotted in the central regions, but that should clear as we get into the day. Starting in Winnipeg at this point right now, we are hovering around 0 and -1. Clear outside. The sun is making its appearance. The skies will stay mostly sunny throughout the day. We warm up to around 8 degrees today, and then the winds will be light coming from the west, making it more like a mild and a pleasant one today. Those cloudy conditions will be returning later in the evening with the wind direction changing to the southeast. Similar conditions we're seeing in the Pembina Valley region, Morden, Winkler, Morris, all the way down to the U.S. border. We're seeing clear conditions already. Temperatures hovering around 0 and -1. It's going to be a mainly sunny day. Light winds, highs around 10 degrees today. Brandon is at -3 and clear. For today, it's going to be mostly sunny, light winds from the southeast and high around 10 degrees also. Davin, good morning to you. The Parkland region will see sunny conditions today. Highs, it's currently -4. The high for today will be around 11 degrees. Gimli, 0. Partly cloudy conditions you're seeing. That should clear as you get into the day. Then some sunny conditions will greet the day. You're looking for highs of 7 degrees. As we head into the powerful influence surrounding areas, we're seeing temperatures hover around -5 at this time. Partly cloudy conditions we're seeing. We're going to see more of these cloudy conditions increase today. Some foggy conditions spotted this morning. That should clear as you get into the morning, and then you warm up to 4 degrees. In Thompson, -11 and mostly clear at this time. The sun made its appearance earlier. Then some clouds will roll in this afternoon. Winds will stay light. Highs around 3 degrees. Further north in Churchill, we're looking at temperatures around -9. We've been stuck there like all morning, and that light snow from yesterday is still falling in that part of the province. It's going to be like that for most of the day. It's going to continue into the evening. We'll warm up to around -7 for that part of the province. So it's more like sunny skies and calm condition down south, and then the northern region, especially Churchill, still stays cloudy and chilly.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
See, I always miss something that Abby catches because I've been saying sunny top to bottom. Not quite. Although Thompson will be sunny. Go a little further north and you've got that cloud cover still hanging around. 22 minutes to 8 o'clock. Our commute's been cooperating this morning so far. If you have anything to report, though, please call us at 788-3093. Just a pesky reminder about the northbound lanes on Pembina at Stafford. You're going to lose turn lanes. And if you get caught there, you're going to be backed up and annoyed and going, why? Why can't I get around? Well, you've been warned. Maybe avoid the area because it does get backed up at this point in the morning. Well, next on the program, we're now 2 weeks away from the federal election, and there's a lot of talk from party leaders about border security and your personal security. We want to ask this morning, what party is the best party to take on crime and keep your family safe? Our weekly political partisan panel joins us now to talk about that, and maybe we'll slide in a question about debate prep as well. All of them are political veterans and devoted Manitobans. Joining us via Zoom today is Aaron Selby, former NDP LA for Southdale here in Winnipeg. Hi, Aaron. Hello, good morning. Good morning. In studio with us, Dan Vandal in his final weeks as Liberal MP for St. Boniface St. Vital. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
And now back in studio today is Dorothy Dobie, former Conservative MP for Winnipeg South and former Parliamentary Secretary. Good morning.
Good morning.
So why don't we start with you, Dorothy, because this week there was a big announcement from your leader, Pierre Poilievre, the 3 strikes and you're out proposal. Tell me why you think this will resonate with Canadians and why it's the right direction to go when it comes to crime.
I think people are really fed up. I think they're afraid and they're worried about their kids and they're worried about going out in the street. And sometimes perhaps it's a little bit more fear than it is reality, but it really resonates with people. People are scared. And you know what? We have to crack down on crime. I think about all of the fentanyl getting into the country, getting up into northern communities, absolutely killing people. We have to get tough on this, and I don't know what the answer is, but it isn't being soft on this.
Have you soft referring to the Liberals?
Well, basically the policies that we've been following over the last number of years and this whole catch and release sort of thing. I mean, well, look, if you're a criminal and you think if I do it, I'm going to be in jail overnight and I'm going to be out the next day, what's there to stop you? Absolutely nothing. So you have to take more difficult measures. We also have to go after the people who are perpetrating these behind the scenes, not the guy that's breaking the window or doing whatever he's doing. He's probably drugged up, who knows. The guy who's directing it, who's bringing the drugs in, who's making these things happen, probably living in luxury somewhere.
Dan Vandal, your response to that and also your response to Dorothy suggesting that the Liberals have been soft and haven't done enough.
I think we have to find the right balance in fighting crime. We have to be tough on crime, especially violent crime. We also have to be tough on the root causes of crime. Relative to us being soft, I think we've heard that message loud and clear. Mark Carney announced this week that he's going to make it harder for people charged with violent crime, violent car thefts, home invasions to get bail. We're upgrading murder charges for intimate partner violence to constructive first-degree murder. We're also recruiting 1,000 more RCMP officers and 1,000 more Canadian border officers to make sure that we can make our borders tougher. So we are doing that, but at the same time, it's important to be tough on the root causes of crime. I think we're going to keep investing in the health and social services, poverty reduction. We're going to keep investing in partnership with First Nation, Métis and Inuit communities, health services, poverty reduction initiatives, education services, which gives people a hand up.
I always like to get around the table once before I know everybody wants to interject, but I do want to get to Aaron Selby then with the NDP. What do you think of what you heard of the other parties' plans, and also what will the NDP do to make families safer?
Well, I will say this, that we both agree, at least Dan and I, that you have to get at the roots of crime. But the problem is their approach to it. They're talking about balancing the budget in the next 3 years. That means cutting services. There's no way you can balance in the next few years and not cut services. And as soon as you cut services, that's going to put more people in poverty. That's going to make more people vulnerable. And that is the root causes of crime. So while we're looking at making sure that we have increased border control, making sure that people have the training to recognize the things that are coming through the border, but we're also talking about making sure people can afford their groceries. We're the only party that's talking about capping grocery prices. We're the only party that's talking about a renter bill of rights. And I have to say, I get really concerned when I hear Poilievre talking about things that are going to override the Charter of Rights. I mean, that sounds a little too much like Trump overriding the American Constitution to me.
Now, you're talking about, I need to refer to this, and Dorothy, then I'll get you to respond. You're referring, and tell me if I'm wrong, but you're referring to the consecutive sentences for murders as opposed to concurrent sentences that Pierre Poilievre talked about using the notwithstanding clause to introduce. Aaron, is that right?
Well, that's right. And that charter doesn't allow for that. And everybody has weighed in. The experts have said that this isn't going to stand up in court. So it's one thing to promise solutions, but if they're not things that are going to stand up in court, then you're just speaking with no actual intent to do anything.
Dorothy, what do you think of your leader's promise on this, the consecutive sentences?
You know, it's a little bit desperate, but I think really he doesn't know where else to go, and I don't know that anybody else does either. I don't hear anybody offering any kind of alternative solution. If somebody comes and kills 6 kids in your family or half your family, you're going through an awful lot of pain, and to know that they're going to be out in a very short period of time. I actually know somebody who had to testify to his mother's murderer to try and keep him in jail when he came up for parole because of the type of sentencing, and absolutely nothing happened. It was very traumatic for him, and the guy got out, and who knows what he's done since then. So there has to be a better solution. I'm also worried, though. I keep hearing about how we're going to close the borders, we're going to do this and that, but we're really not dealing with the issue in Canada. And I go back to fentanyl. I think it's the most pernicious drug that has ever been introduced anywhere. And I think there's a deeper strategy we have to follow to get to this. So first of all, we have drug pharma companies, and I'm sure both Dan and you will agree that the big pharma is pushing opiates, and that is not a healthy thing. Most of us don't need opiates to recover from simple pain. And then we also have people...
I'm going to trust my doctor to make that decision.
Well, I know, and we have been doing that. And look what's happened. People come out. Lots of people who are addicted on the street.
Are you saying we shouldn't trust doctors' opinions on what they think
I'm saying that
people?
Doctors are being... look, the advertising doesn't come to you from the opiate companies, from the pharmacy companies. It goes to your doctor. So he's following the advice they give him. They're saying, listen, we've got the stamp of approval from Canada.
That they have to follow, Dorothy.
I just want to get
something that they take very seriously. And I have to say, I would rather be taking my medical advice from my doctor.
That's fine. And if your kid gets, addicted to drugs because then you're in trouble. Let me just finish what I was going to say. So we have to really start to take a look at why we're having so many problems with addiction and get to as you say, the root causes. This is really important. And also we have to look at the way our criminal justice system works in Canada. And it isn't just the RCMP or just the Winnipeg Police or just the CSI, whatever it is, CSIS. It is that there's no communication between them, and they have to get their act together and start looking at the manufacture of fentanyl in Canada and then the distribution.
Dan is holding his breath to get in, but
a health crisis, not as a crime. Addiction is a problem with health. It's a health issue. It's not a crime issue. And as long as we're looking at punishing people instead of supporting people and looking at the root causes of addiction and crime, it doesn't get stopped by police. Police are going to respond to the crime,
issue,
not prevent it.
Okay, we're going to go back to you in a moment because you're disagreeing with that and saying it's not the issue. So I want to be clear about whether or not there's ideological differences in approaching this. But Dan, you've been waiting to get in.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, on the notwithstanding clause, I can say this is a continuation of a conservative trend that's occurring. First off, with Scott Moe, who's taken away the rights of trans kids in Saskatchewan. Doug Ford has attacked labor. François Legault has attacked religious symbols in Quebec. And I'm really, really concerned when the notwithstanding clause is promised to be used to commit to respect a party platform. The notwithstanding clause was part of the Constitution to solve real constitutional crisis at the highest level and not to fulfill a party platform.
So you feel this is a dangerous step? That is what your leader has said.
It is a dangerous step. And on top of that, I can't think of one person who's murdered multiple people that's been released early from jail. So if there's examples of that, I'd like to hear that. On January 4th, 24, Bill C-48 became law in Canada. It's a law that makes it more difficult for certain violent offenders to be released on bail. That is now the law of the country. We've moved to get tougher on bail, but the problem is the provinces won't use it, or they won't even talk about it, because the provinces basically wanted to get rid of the federal government and Justin Trudeau, and they're playing politics every step of the way on this very important crime issue.
Let me just wind this out for a moment, because what I'm hearing in both what we're talking about, all three of you responding to the border issues, we now started to get into some addiction and fentanyl, where you're talking about some of the opiates, Dorothy, you're raising. And then obviously the wider picture is how are people going to feel safer. But I'm wondering about the ideological differences between your three parties. So there is what may be in front of people, what they may fear. There is statistically what might be impacting their lives. Mm-hmm. There's, the justice system, which, repeat offenders is what we're talking about. But then there is also, part of this conversation comes back to underlying issues, and prevention. So we're talking about prevention and causation, but we're also talking about result. I'm wondering if there's an ideological difference do you see between your parties and how you approach it? Like, Dorothy, what would you say if someone says, well, the Conservatives care about the punishment, but not the prevention?
Well, that's just patently untrue. I mean, of course we do. We also care about the people who are being harmed and also the people that perpetrate these crimes, often under the influence of something very pernicious. I'm kind of thinking about what happened during the Prohibition when the drug of the day was alcohol, and Al Capone and all his gang had control of law and order in the United States and in Canada as well. And we didn't actually get this under control until we went after the big thugs that were behind the scenes. I really think that's something we should look a little harder at in Canada. And yeah, all these things are Band-Aids, including this notwithstanding thing. They're all Band-Aid issues when we have to go after the root cause. And the root cause isn't poverty. It's about people who want to take advantage of other people and use them to commit crime.
I'm going to go to you now, actually. Well, I'm going to come back to you, Dan, in a moment. I'm just going to go to Aaron first. So I'm going to push you with a question from a different angle. What would you say to people who say the NDP will care about the underlying issues, but yet we're still going to have crimes perpetrated and because it's not, your party's not tough enough?
I mean, I'll quote Dorothy on that. That's just silly to say that. Of course, we want to make sure that people who commit the crime have to be deterred from that. But to say that the root cause of crime isn't poverty it's ridiculous. Obviously, if people don't feel like they have hope, if they don't feel like they have a future, if they don't feel like they have any chance of getting a good job, of any chance of actually buying a house someday, if they can't put food on the table, they're going to feel vulnerable and they're going to feel desperate. So that is what we need to do, is make sure that everybody feels like there is a hope and a future for them and their family. And when you can't feed your family, when you can't keep a roof over your head, it's really, really hard to be thinking about what your next move is.
Dan wants to get in.
Yeah, close to 80% of homicides in Canada are caused by firearms. That's one of the main reasons why we outlawed military-style assault weapons in Canada. Weapons that were designed to be used on the battlefield and not on our streets. The Conservative opposed that every step of the way, especially Pierre Poilievre was vehemently opposed. We will continue to ban military-style assault weapons. We will continue the buyback program for people who legally have these weapons that need to get rid of them. We will continue to automatically revoke gun licenses for people convicted of violent offenses. And we will let the RCMP classify new guns that enter the market rather than the gun industry.
9 minutes to 8 o'clock. We're with our partisan panel. Today we're focusing on crime. Today we're focusing on how the different parties are proposing to keep your family safe. What's the government's responsibility to help rehabilitate people who get into criminal activity, do you think, Dorothy?
Well, we have a responsibility to try, but we haven't been successful. We think we know everything about human nature and what we can do about it, but we're not very successful. I was thinking about this morning and thinking, I remember being a kid, 24 years old, going into Stony Mountain to take a look at some people we were trying to rehabilitate way back then. And finding we haven't done anything different. I remember writing a story called Cruel and Inhuman Punishment. That's lovely. That's the heart talking. But the brain says now, that doesn't work. We're not doing the right things. We don't find a way to give them a job when they get out of prison. And it isn't about poverty. It's about some people are just out there to take advantage of others. How do you deal with that? I think you need a more in-depth look at the issue than we've been giving it over the last number of years.
The leaders' debate. I'm going to switch gears here in our remaining time. So the leaders' debates are coming up. I thought while we have you insiders with us, I'd ask some questions about this. What's it like sort of on the eve of these debates for the leaders? What likely, I'll go to you, Dan, here. I mean, what will Mark Carney, in your view, need to be thinking about if he's going to make, do well in these debates?
Well, he needs to be thinking about and practicing, like a real-time practice, to give a good, coherent answer to every possible question that can come up in both official languages. The French one is tomorrow. English is on Wednesday, and that comes through Thursday. That comes through simply not only practice, but getting other people to make sure they ask you tough questions, and it's not only your answers, it's your it's the way you hold your body, it's the way you speak. I think there's obviously good people working with all five leaders. For these very important debates.
Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the NDP, Aaron, what do you hope that he will get across, and what might he be preparing for in your view right now leading up?
Well, I think that he definitely has to get across that having the NDP in Parliament means that you have the conscience for Canadians. You've got somebody there standing up for regular Canadians, because all the things that the Liberals are standing on right now, pharmacare increases, housing, childcare, that's all been done because they were working with the NDP. So I want people to keep in mind that I don't think we're looking at numbers that we're going to form a majority government. We're not thinking that way, but you do want to have the NDP so that there's somebody there speaking up for average people. We've already got enough people speaking for big business. We've got enough people speaking for very wealthy folks, but you need the NDP there to remind everybody about just average families and what we need.
And Dorothy, what does Pierre Poilievre need to achieve in these debates?
I think it's really important that he shows who he personally is. We don't get his warm side often on television. Maybe he's a little bit nervous. He's young. He's only 42. But the man I know is a warm person who really cares about others and is very committed to Canada, very committed to a better country for all of us. He has to get that across.
Just last word here. I find myself with like this magic minute and a half left, so I'm going to go right around the table and play the table. Just to reiterate and encapsulate, kind of wrap up what we've been talking about on the crime issues. So Aaron, first to you, and then we'll go Dan, then we'll go Dorothy. Why are the NDP best to protect Canadian families? Like for listeners listening this morning, why is your party going to protect them the best and make them feel
Well, I can tell you
safer?
we're the only ones talking about things that are going to matter to families, like making sure that your grocery bill has caps on the essentials, making sure there's a renter's bill of rights. We're the only ones who are talking about taking on white collar crime as well. I mean, if you want to pay for all these things, let's stop letting wealthy corporations avoid paying taxes. We've got $40 billion that we lose every year because wealthy corporations aren't paying taxes. That money could come back to help the things that would prevent crime.
Dan Van Zel, the Liberals, why is your party best to protect Canadians?
It's all about finding the right balance. I completely agree. You have to be tough on crime, especially violent crime. But being tough on crime is not enough. You have to find the right balance to give hope to Canadians. You have to make sure you fund poverty reduction programs, that you give some quality of life improvement to average Canadians. The NDP are not the only party talking about average Canadians. The Liberals have done a great job over the last 10 years. We will continue to do that in the next 4.
Dorothy, the last words to you.
Well, you've been pretty good at talking, that's for sure. I really think it's important that we...
She got a shot in at the end, but it is
Sorry,
her time.
Dan, I had to do that. I really think it's...
I'm used to it.
The Conservatives are really good and they're fresh, they're new, they have some really solid ideas. They respect Canadians. They respect the ability of Canadians to build and grow and develop things for themselves. Government, as I've said this 3 times now, is not God. We cannot solve all the problems, but individuals can. Individuals, given the chance, can do an awful lot to right the wrongs that have happened in this country in the last number of years.
We're getting close now, you guys. We'll see you next week. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's Dorothy Doby, former Conservative MP for Winnipeg South, former Parliamentary Secretary. Aaron Selby via Zoom today, former NDP LA for Southdale here in Winnipeg. And Dan Van Zel until April 28th is the Liberal MP for St. Boniface, St. Fitzhel. They are our Made in Manitoba political panel. They join us every week, have been joining us every week. And as I said, we're getting close. We'll talk to them next week. It is 4 minutes now to 8 o'clock. Heather Wells is here with news headlines and other stories.
Good morning. Manitoba's PC opposition says it's okay with Manitoba Hydro devoting more power to Canadian customers. Premier Wab Kinew has announced 2 expiring hydro export contracts with the U.S. will not be renewed. PC Hydro critic Lauren Stone says she's not opposed to that in principle, but wants to know how much of that decision, how much it's going to cost. The Premier says Hydro incorporated the expiring contracts into its new rate application. And as the federal election nears, people in rural Manitoba hope healthcare in their communities is not forgotten. We're going to hear the experience of a mother in southern Manitoba coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather. In Winnipeg, a sunny sky out there, -1, but we're going to go to a high of 8 with lots of sunshine throughout the day and much lighter winds than we had yesterday. On the morning commute, call us if you see any major problems. We don't have anything new to report at this hour, 788-3093. Well, we have an awesome show coming up after 8 for you. It's been a packed, busy one this morning. But after 8 o'clock on the program, today is American Sign Language Day. Coming up, we have special musical programming that includes ASL. Rain Hamilton's going to perform live for us still ahead. She's warming up in our CBC Music Studio 11. But we also have an interview with a deaf concert goer and artist about why they want to see more ASL in art spaces. So you've got some time during World Report. We encourage you to check out our YouTube stream because we hope that maybe you'll watch the music live there and you'll be able to see the ASL interpretation as well. So stay with us. It's all still ahead on Information Radio. And to tease you, I think, Abby, we've got a bit of a clip of Rain and her music.
Brave land of preaching, sit with me and lift me to the sky, that I might hear you.
And we're going to hear from them coming up after 8. Stay with us. World Report is next. It's 1 minute to.
On Cue with Tom Power.
Ray Mendoza served with the Navy SEALs in Iraq in 2006, and now he's made a new film about one day that sticks out in his mind from that time. Ray will be here alongside the Toronto actor Defaro Lunatai, who plays Ray in the film, to tell you the story they wanted to tell.
Let's move!
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel-Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
Voters in rural Canada are listening to what the parties are offering this election, but they often feel their needs are not being heard. Guest host Mark Kelly hears what rural communities want and why one-size-fits-all doesn't work for them. On The Current, in half an hour.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Canada's inflation rate dipped last month. Statistics Canada just released their latest consumer price index report. It shows a decline of 0.3% from February, which is a surprise to some economists. CBC senior business correspondent Peter Armstrong has more.
These inflation numbers look back at an economy that was so different in so many ways from the one we live in today. Back then, we were still trying to figure out whether Donald Trump would actually go through with his threats to undo the global trade order. Some tariffs were imposed, but quickly granted exemptions and workarounds were provided. So the drivers of prices then were the end of the federal GST holiday, for example, and, the falling price of gasoline. And surprisingly, price growth cooled considerably. Economists were expecting to see an acceleration in March, and that slowing gives the Bank of Canada more wiggle room than expected. The central bank meets tomorrow to decide what to do about interest rates. Most believe the bank wants to cut rates and stimulate the economy, but was worried about inflation. After these numbers, it obviously has a little bit less to worry about. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
The tariffs you heard Peter mention and international trade are the top priority for some Alberta farmers. And they're thinking about that as they consider who to cast their ballots for in this federal election. Party leaders have just 13 days to convince Canadians to vote for them. The CBC's Madeline Cummings has more from Edmonton.
Climbing into his tractor, grain farmer Shane Stridehorst is just a few weeks away from seeding fava beans in his fields northwest of Edmonton. With most Canadian pulses exported and a global trade war unfolding, he's worried.
What we really need is a government that's going to be willing to grow our international markets.
He says some farmers are considering swapping canola for barley in response to Chinese tariffs on Canadian canola oil. Fellow grain farmer Ron Kryko says he's voting Conservative, hoping Pierre Poilievre can break down trade barriers.
I think a lot of the farmers are just frustrated with what's been happening, and they want to change.
Kryko wasn't a fan of the carbon tax.
I don't know why you would tax something that is a necessity.
And even though Liberal leader Mark Carney got rid of the consumer carbon tax, that didn't win him over.
Well, they've had 10 years to prove themselves to be a worthy government.
Though international trade is top of mind for these grain farmers, it's not as important to Michael Verhoeven. He's the head grower at High Q Greenhouses and on the board of the Alberta Greenhouse Growers Association. He says since most industry growers sell to Canadian clients, they have different priorities.
Business management strategies the federal government has, like Agri-Stability, Agri-Invest, that they should be modernized and that they should be maintained.
All three farmers say they haven't heard agricultural issues discussed much during the campaign so far. Madeline Cummings, CBC News, Edmonton.
This Thursday night, Susan Bonner and Peter Chattopadhyay will bring you full coverage and analysis of the federal leaders' English language debate. That is April 17th at 7 p.m. Eastern on CBC Radio and the CBC News app. Stay tuned for a special edition of Cross Country Checkup. Ian Hannamansing will take calls to hear your reactions to the debate as we get closer to voting day in this crucial election.
1 in 3 Sudanese, as we speak today, are displaced. 1 in 6 internally displaced persons globally come from Sudan.
A grim statistic from the UN's Mamadou Diane Baldi, a regional director for East Africa. Sudan's civil wars forcing people out of their homes. Today marks the second anniversary of that conflict. Canada and 20 other countries are meeting in London to address the crisis. As Idil Musa tells us, Sudanese Canadians say Ottawa is slow to bring refugees to Canada.
I contacted the Canadian High Commission in London within days of the war breaking out.
Canadian Sami Atabani is desperately trying to get his sister and her 7 children out of Sudan. He applied to Canada's family-based pathway program in hopes of getting them to safety, but the cap on applications had been reached.
Women are particularly vulnerable. She has a 12-year-old daughter.
Atabani has reapplied to bring them to Canada, but he's frustrated with the time it's taking.
I haven't heard anything. Why is there no urgency?
The United Nations says the conflict has sparked the world's largest displacement crisis, affecting nearly 13 million people. And the U.S. Special Envoy for Sudan says estimates suggest as many as 150,000 people have been killed. Kate Hickson is with Amnesty International USA.
We've seen in other instances where governments have moved very quickly to help with those who need to seek safety elsewhere to reunite with their family, and we don't necessarily see this with Sudan, and so there needs to not be that double standard.
More than 40,000 Afghan refugees came to Canada after the Taliban took over Afghanistan in 2021, and 300,000 Ukrainians were admitted after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So far, just over 700 people from Sudan have settled in Canada under the federal government's family-based pathway program. Idil Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
U.S. President Donald Trump is cutting off federal funding to Harvard University. The school is refusing to abide by the Trump administration's policy agenda for campuses. Last night, the government froze some $2.2 billion in grants. The CBC's Richard Madden joins me now from Washington. And Richard, what is the latest?
Yeah, this is setting up a major clash between the White House and a prominent Ivy League university. Harvard's president calls it an attempted takeover by the federal government, saying the university won't surrender its independence, and it becomes the first elite school to publicly refuse these extraordinary policy changes demanded by the Trump administration. Now, federal agencies threaten to pull billions in funding unless Harvard overhauls its admissions, reports students the administration believes are hostile to American values, ensuring each academic department is, quote, viewpoint diverse, and eliminating all diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Now, the White House says it's part of its crackdown on campus activism and anti-Semitism, but Harvard law professor Andrew Crespo is suing the administration for violating First Amendment rights.
It's a transparent effort to change what is taught, what we say in our classrooms, what we teach our students, to make sure that the only things that are actually said on university campuses are things that the Trump administration wants to hear.
Now, the administration has been threatening to withhold billions to several Ivy League schools that had troubles with student activism in the past. First was Columbia in New York, which acquiesced. The administration has also paused funding to the University of Pennsylvania, Princeton, Cornell, and others.
What is the White House saying?
Well, this pressure tactic appears to be working in some cases. The White House says it will not use taxpayer dollars to fund what it calls Harvard's support of dangerous racial discrimination.
Thank you, Richard.
You bet.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. More Canadian permanent residents are complaining about being stranded abroad. Last week, we told you about a woman who had her permanent resident card stolen in the UK. She fought for weeks to be allowed back into Canada. Now, several others have told CBC News similar stories, and for some, it's resulted in tens of thousands of dollars in debt. The CBC's Elise Skura has more.
Puna McMullen lost her permanent resident card while vacationing in Mexico and then got turned away at the airport.
I have a British passport. We're part of the Commonwealth. Why can I not come back to Canada?
And she's been living here for more than 2 decades.
I just can't believe they didn't even let us come back to the freaking country.
Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada then approved her application for an emergency travel document. It sent her to TT Services run by VFS Global. Canada contracts the company to help non-citizens. It took McMullen's passport so that it could return it with a temporary visa inside. Then McMullen and her husband waited in Mexico. Days became weeks, 4 weeks to be exact, all while racking up expenses.
I'd say about 40.
That's $40,000. A few months later, Wei Yu's PR card was stolen in the same country, and he also dealt with VFS Global.
No updates. I called daily. No one knew where my documents were.
After 3 weeks, Yu took matters into his own hands. He reached out to VFS Global executives on LinkedIn and got his passport sent out the next day, but not before missing something important back in Montreal.
I was actually scheduled for my citizenship test.
CBC reached out to VFS Global to find out what's behind these delays. It told us only the Government of Canada can control processing times or prioritize urgent applications. IRCC could not give CBC a response by deadline, but Yu says he did eventually get to take his test. Elise Gura, CBC News, Ottawa.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. Look at that bright sunshine. Don't forget your shades today. I'm Marcy Marcuso, live in Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. Thanks for joining us. Sunny, a high of 8 today in Winnipeg. Sunny in Brandon and Thompson. Brandon will hit 10 and Thompson will hit 3 degrees. Our morning commute's even cooperating. This half hour on the program, we have some very special programming. Art is for everyone. That's the sentiment behind One Winnipeg Musicians initiative to make musical spaces more inclusive. We're going to hear a live performance from Rain Hamilton about why they tour with ASL interpretation. We'll also hear that. Plus, if you are deaf, does that mean that you can't go and enjoy a musical performance or concert? Well, absolutely not. For this ASL day, we're going to have a conversation with a deaf concert goer from Winnipeg who's also an artist locally. Stay tuned, and we hope you check out our YouTube stream to see it all in action. Right now, quick headlines with Heather Wells.
Well, the developer who owns the LeMay Forest says the province is going to have a fight over its hands over expropriation. Yesterday, the Premier announced the 23 acres in St. Norbert would be turned into a provincial park. John Winthrop was startled by that announcement because he says the Premier's been ignoring him for months. Well, you may have heard on World Report about how Canada's inflation rate fell last month nationally, dipping to 2.3% from 2.6% in February. In Manitoba, inflation also fell to 3% from 3.5%. Stats Canada says falling gasoline prices were the biggest factor, along with a drop in the price of air travel. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, we do not normally do this, but if you are one of our radio listeners, I would encourage you to get online on your phone, on your laptop, if you're there, and watch the next piece on our CBC Manitoba YouTube channel, because my next guest is deaf and we want you to both see and hear her. Today is National American Sign Language Day. As I've said, here in Winnipeg, ASL interpretation has carved a niche path into the music and arts community. Joanna Hawkins is deaf and works with Manitoba Possible as an early learning consultant and an ASL coach. She also enjoys attending music concerts when they offer ASL interpretation especially. I spoke with Joanna alongside her ASL interpreter, Jordan Winnichuk, yesterday. The voice you're going to hear is the interpreter, and there's a slight delay because of the interpretation. Hi, Joanna.
Hi. Hi there, Marcy. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate that. It's really special.
So I want to go back to something that you share, because you've said, I understand you've always had a strong connection to the arts. What were your first experiences connecting to music?
Yes. Really, the first experience I had, I would have been a child. I remember watching Mr. Bean. So I grew up with family that didn't sign. My parents were deaf, but they had moved away to Italy. So there was a little bit of a disconnect, and I stayed with my family here. And so during Christmas holidays, Easter holidays, we'd always have family gatherings. Everyone would come over to eat. And it was a hard time kind of following the conversation, trying to lip read with everybody talking at the same time. So my aunt, she would allow me to watch TV, and I loved doing it. And I remember finding Mr. Bean, the TV show on there. And I felt that really impacted me in a way, because I was able to understand Mr. Bean and his movements without talking. And so it seemed like it was a bit of a universal gesturing that everybody would be able to understand. And so, being able to connect with deaf people here, I felt that that wasn't like a barrier that I had or that hearing people didn't have. And so from there, I became more interested in art and performing and mime, and going to concerts. My first concert actually was Garth Brooks. I had gone with my friend. They are hard of hearing. So she memorized all of the lyrics to Garth Brooks and his music. And so she would sign to me throughout the concert when we were there. And it was a really cool experience because I would watch the signing and I'd also watch the movement from the musicians as well. And you know that deaf people have different levels of hearing loss. So some are not able to hear anything. I'm able to hear any loud noises. So the bass is very loud. I'm able to hear that. And another cool trick to have, if you hold a balloon and blow it up, you are able to hear the vibrations from the musicians as they're performing at concerts. So it's a really cool experience. So yes, my first experience was at Garth Brooks, going there and having my friend interpret for me.
That's so special. I'm just going to interject for a minute that she would, do that for you for your first experience. I want to ask you more about the balloon. So how does that work? Do you physically do this when you go to a concert? Do you have a balloon?
My first experience at Garth Brooks, I didn't, but there had been another time that I had gone. My friend had a radio at home, and she had the bass down really low here. And we thought, oh, what would be good if we would blow a balloon up, and just thought for one time to try doing that. So we had wanted to see what it'd be like having a balloon there. And I remember being in a party with their music, and I held that balloon. I felt like, oh, you can actually feel the bass here. And so then when I was with my friend, we were at home having the radio, we wanted to do that and try to see if we could feel the beat as well from the radio. So at a live concert, obviously it's very loud. At home, having your radio blasted is not as loud, but you'd still able to feel the vibrations through the balloon. And then being at a music concert with their that much louder, you'd be able to feel it more.
You are a performer now, but I obviously said you always had a strong pull toward it. But I understand that at University of Manitoba, you were shut out of joining the performing group. Is that right?
Yes, you're right. Yes, that was a while ago. And at that time, I felt that there was no proper deaf services to support deaf students going into post-secondary. Now they do, but at the time I was there, they did not have any kind of supports. So, I had finished high school. I was interested in going to university. And I remember speaking to a student advisor that was not familiar with having interpreters, didn't understand how an interpreter would work in a performing arts degree. And I was told I had to pick another degree. So I ended up getting a Bachelor of Fine Arts.
As you started connecting with the Winnipeg arts community, what was your experience of ASL accessibility in our local community, particularly around, sound-centered events like music concerts? What's it like now?
Oh, here in Winnipeg, I feel very fortunate here. People are trying their best to be very supportive and advocate for deaf accessibility for deaf and hard of hearing people. I know some musicians do provide interpreters. So I know, for example, Bros Landreth. They will provide. Yeah. Brothers Landreth. So. Also, Rain Hamilton. She provides interpreters for her shows. So some local artists will be able to provide interpreters most of the time. Also sometimes at, like music festivals in summer, they'll have that. So it's pretty awesome that that's more and more showing up there, that interpreters are there.
What more needs to be done in terms of accessibility in art spaces in our community?
I feel there should be more deaf performers with interpreters on stage. So ASL is good to have to interpret. The interpreter can learn, but at the same time, having a deaf performer up there it's their language. It's an authentic language that they would know better. So to be able to hear the words from the performer and be able to interpret that. So it's not just interpreting what an interpreter would do, but a deaf interpreter would more like embody more the style, the music, can go more in depth with understanding the meaning. So I do think that having a deaf person up there with the interpreter would feed the deaf performer what is being said, and they'd be able to take that and be able to sign it even more in their first language, which is ASL.
You mentioned Rain Hamilton. What do you love about her music?
Oh, I love many. There's many songs of hers that I do love, but I do love this one. It's called Bury My Heart. I feel it's very, smooth, kind of making you think of memories and back in the past. I know Rain herself, she had used me as a deaf performer at one of her concerts with an interpreter. So I have performed a few of her songs that she has sung. So really just analyzing the lyrics. And Rain is a very organized person herself. And the lyrics that she has will be on one column. And then on a second column beside that, she has that column that has the meaning of what the lyrics mean for the interpreter and for me. So it's a better understanding of what we're able to understand what the lyrics are meaning, therefore a better interpretation for the audience. So yeah, it's very meaningful that she does that.
Because you're getting emotion, and as you said, you're getting more than just an interpretation, if you will. You're actually getting some of the emotion and feeling around that. You are getting some performance.
Yes, exactly that. Yeah. And why, so for example, here, hearing people when they're watching somebody perform, so for example, a violin, or if they're hearing a guitar, some of the music can kind of maybe touch you a bit, and you remember something, or I remember this song from what I heard on that day and what had happened. Or with the violin, you can hear that it sounds sad or it's slow, so you can understand and relate that to something. But deaf people watching that, they just see somebody playing the violin. They don't understand the meaning that's incorporated into the tone of what is being played. So, we see and we're like, oh, that's cool, but we don't really understand the meaning. So when a deaf performer can analyze the lyrics and are able to give exactly what the musician is trying to express in their song, the sadness that's there, a deaf person can understand that more and then can resonate with the song more. So it's the same as a hearing person listening to it. We can see it in how it's being interpreted.
Before you go, Joanna, what stigma would you like to address that you feel like, why do people think this about the deaf community?
Oh, lip reading. Assume that all deaf people can lip read. No, that is not true. Not all of us can lip read. It's pretty tough actually to master. Actually, only 30% of people are able to lip read. And the rest, have to try and figure that out and kind of fill in the blanks a little bit. It is quite challenging, and it's a lot of hard work to lip read. So the best way to communicate with deaf people is ask a deaf person or a hard of hearing person what their preference is. Maybe some like to text back and forth.
Thank you so much for being with us on this significant day, as we mentioned, and really nice to have you on CBC.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I hope that you have a wonderful day.
Joanna Hawkins, my guest on American Sign Language Day. She is a deaf performing artist. She works with Manitoba Possible as well. And she's performing on Saturday, by the way, with her group, 100 Decibel Deaf Mime Troupe at the West End Cultural Centre. You can catch their show. Thanks to Jordan Winnichuk for ASL interpretation. 8:23 on CBC. And as I alluded to earlier in this half hour, what a special thing we have coming up next on the program. Joanna mentioning the music of Rain Hamilton, how ASL interpretation factors into performances. So Rain Hamilton with ASL interpreter Brittany Taves are live right now in our CBC Studio 11 with new music. This is Braveland.
Born one day breathing, gifted these feet that walk the earth. Tread stepping lightly, the earth is our body and our lover. I've never seen a green this green before. Brave land I'm preaching, sit with me and lift me to the sky, that I may hear you covered in crystal, holy mantle where the sun is set. I've never seen a light this light before. Sing to me, starlight, oh shine that I might find my way through. Call to me, sliver of the moon, waxing, waning, and revealing. Come now, indweller of my heart, chase the sorrow from the darkest part. Offer the breaking of my bones, the pouring of my heart, that I could be a channel of thy peace. Make me warm, make me willing. And come now, indweller of my heart, chase the sorrow from the darkest part.
What a gift on a Tuesday morning. Live music on CBC. I made my way down to our Music Studio 11 with ASL interpreter Brittany Taves and with Rain Hamilton. Just beautiful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. A pleasure to be here.
It's interesting. I've never seen a musical performance with ASL interpretation on this National Sign Language Day. I know you call it parallel art. How does it work when you're sort of, working to try to get the feeling of your lyrics across to, this morning, Brittany, who did beautifully with this tune, Braveland?
It's such a beautiful process. And here's what I've learned from deaf community is that the point is to offer like a parallel art experience. So Brittany, in consultation and in collaboration with deaf artists, is performing the experience of the art, the meaning, the experience. And so that way, a hearing audience and a deaf audience together, we can have a parallel shared experience in real time. So that way, deaf people who are interested are able to tap in to this gathering art community experience that is a really powerful thing.
Obviously, everyone who comes to one of your shows and loves your music is going to have their own feelings around what a song means to them. So how much do you explain what you were thinking as you wrote a song so that it's interpreted maybe at least in a way that's accessible, but also that might give people a starting point for the emotion?
I have been preparing in a detailed way, and I've honed this over the years as I've been doing this collaboration for a while now. And I'm happy to share this information and some guidelines with any artists who are interested or anyone. And so I'll prepare like the text, the lyrics of the song, and then beside it in a different column, I'll say the meaning, like what is this symbolically? What am I imagining, kind of the through line, the thread of the story? And then that helps us to offer like a really authentic parallel experience.
Why is accessibility in this way important to you and important in the arts overall?
Well, art is a really important human experience. It's common to every culture,
every community on the earth. And it's so important to us as people to gather and to share art and to connect in this way that no other form offers. That's what art does.
You're just off the road from being in BC. What was the response from the deaf community who attended your shows there?
Oh, it was a positive experience and a positive set of feedback. And we are so proud to be able to offer a more accessible show.
Now, this song this morning is about your new music, Braveland, is about, I understand, that the album's about mountains. It's a bit about bridging two worlds, which is, I guess, kind of metaphoric for bridging the hearing and non-hearing worlds.
That works. That's right. Yeah, the deaf and non-deaf, the mountains and the sky together.
You were an early adopter to this. We mentioned back 2018, I think. Was there a personal motivation, or what was it? Was it just a feeling that you wanted everyone to be able to access your music?
I really believe that art is for everyone, and I really know the power of art in my own life. Like, that has been so groundbreaking and so important. And so when I heard from deaf community that there was interest in this and demand for this, I knew that I could do something about it. I perform shows all the time. I could work that in.
Thank you so much for being part of ASL Day here, and also for coming in. And thank you, Brittany, as well. Do you want to play 30 seconds and we'll slide right into news? Rain Hamilton, check out, please, on Facebook, all the socials, on the websites, and support local art, local artists like Rain, and check out upcoming shows. They're going to play us right into our CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. Gorgeous sunshine out there. It's going to be with us all day. Just a bit of a breeze and a high of 8. Right now in Winnipeg, it is 0. Accessible health care is a priority for a Manitoba mother in this federal election. The emergency room at Morris General Hospital south of Winnipeg is one of several rural Manitoba ERs closed since 2023. Megan Adams lives with multiple sclerosis, but it was her son's allergic reaction to kiwi that made not having a local ER frightening. She says they rushed to Boundary Trails Health Centre near Winkler.
It was scary when your son's life is being threatened and you have no choice but to call an ambulance and take your son on a 45-minute drive to receive treatment.
The Society of Rural Physicians of Canada is calling on all federal parties to commit to creating a national rural healthcare workforce strategy to deal with staffing shortages. They also want the next government to make it easier for doctors to practice across provinces. Well, all the main party leaders are in the Montreal area today campaigning and preparing for this week's 2 debates. The French language debate set for tomorrow. The English debate is scheduled for Thursday. And the Federal Debate Commission has now released the list of topics. They range from affordability and the cost of living, energy and climate, leading in a crisis, public safety and security, and tariffs and threats to Canada. The developer who owns the Lemay Forest says it will fight the province's plan to expropriate the St. Norbert property. Yesterday, the Premier announced the 23 acres would be turned into a provincial park. John Winthrop was with crews at the Lemay Forest. They had just started chopping down more trees, and he was caught off guard by the province's plan.
Shocked that nobody from any government official has ever reached out to us on that. We reached out to them multiple times. I reached out to Premier Wab Kinew going back 18 months looking for advice, looking for direction, looking for help on this matter. He completely ignored us all along.
Winthrop says the expropriation will be very expensive for Manitoba taxpayers. Now, one of the protesters with the Coalition to Save Lemay Forest says she cried when she heard the news of the expropriation. Louise May has spent months trying to block the development through demonstrations and court battles. She says it was quite the emotional swing yesterday.
Huge sensation of relief that because I thought, we had maybe come to the end of the road of possibilities. When they started cutting, I felt the least hopeful I had ever felt.
May says it's a great example of the power of grassroots rising together. Manitoba's PC opposition says it is okay with Manitoba Hydro devoting more power to Canadian customers. Premier Rob Canoe has announced 2 expiring hydro export contracts with the U.S. will not be renewed. PC Hydro critic Lauren Stone says she's not opposed to that in principle, but wants to know how much that decision will cost.
We have a Crown Corporation that's $25 billion in debt. We have a Crown Corporation that's put in a rate application requiring $31 billion in maintenance and upgrades within the province of Manitoba. And so when the Premier came out with his announcement today, it really didn't sound like he thought through what those cost implications are.
The Premier says Hydro incorporated the expiring contracts into its new rate application. Canoe says electricity demands are high in Canada and may sell some of this capacity to Western provinces, as well as reserving 50 megawatts for a proposed hydro line to Nunavut. Canada's inflation rate fell last month. Statistics Canada says it dipped down to 2.3% from 2.6% in February. Falling gasoline prices were the biggest factor, along with the drop in the price of air travel. The Bank of Canada is taking all of this into account as it prepares to issue its April interest rate setting. That comes out tomorrow. Now, in Manitoba, inflation also slowed to 3% last month. It had been 3.5%. A Winnipeg student says not much can be done now that his information may have ended up on the dark web. The group behind the breach at Pembina Trail School Division released more than 1 million files after failing to find a buyer for that information. Sebastian Kelly is a student in grade 10.
Obviously, I'm not an IT professional, but what I can say is that this information, should have been protected a little bit better.
Kelly says while the students had their personal data leaked, staff had more sensitive data exposed in the hack. The leaked files include payroll information, credit card statements, and photos of passports. You can find more news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Heather, stay with us for a sec because Marjorie Dalhouse popped in about the call-in on noon, and this is all for you.
Yes. So, Heather, we're talking today on Radio Noon about Oral Health Month because April is Oral Health Month. And I heard that you are one of the best...
She's a superstar.
Superstar when it comes to taking care of your teeth and your mouth.
I love flossing. I love brushing so much.
She does.
Good for you.
Yeah. I would like to say that I do. It's important. So you're going to be talking all about that and questions about oral health.
Yeah, we're going to be taking your questions about oral health. The president of the Canadian Dental Association, who's here in Winnipeg, will be joining us today on Radio Noon.
Wow, bringing out the big guest.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Marge.
Thanks.
Thank you, Heather, as well. Between 12:30 and 1, that's the call-in. Heather Wells, Megan Ketchison, Joni Nicolo, as well as Brad Lilly, Sierra Sanders, as well as Abby Adeyemi and May McKillop, Donna Carrero, Jim Agapito, and Sid Horshik. I know I said the names quickly, but really grateful to everybody who worked on the program today. Thank you. I've run out of time here. Sorry, Abby.
It's going to be sunny.
There. That's all we got for you. Sunny and 8 degrees. Take care, everyone.